Glasgow.
Math, 6 through 12, September 23rd, a.m.
Good morning. I hope everyone had a wonderful evening last night, a good dinner, and restful time, lots of relaxing reading, I'm sure. Today, we have an addition to our group. Bob, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Bob Glasgow, so you will know me.
Whatever you would like to share.
I'm a professor of math at Southwest Baptist University. I've been there for 26 years. And, I don't know what else to do.
All right, sounds great. Thank you, Bob. I'm Tina Bolte. I'm the facilitator. And Margaret, let's just go around and give our name and a little bit so that Bob knows who we are and will help all of us remember.
27 is Margaret Garber. I'm Dr. Bonner from St. Joseph, Missouri.
I'm Tiffany Jones.
Deborah Miller, Assistant Principal at Parkland High School.
Julie Schuster.
Frederick Deco, I'm at Eagle Victory Academy, and you've got some of our students.
I'm Ann Gassel. I'm a parent in the Rockford schools. I'm David Schmitz. I'm a parent in the City for Community College. Kathy Davis from Lisa, and I work at the Regional Professional Development Center in the city. Nancy Bird, Healthy Conversation, and as board member.
All right, thank you. Coming around is a sign-in sheet. Once we get that complete, we'll give that to Jay as part of the record of our meeting. And then also, I have the meal tickets. They're on their way. Let me get that out of the way first. Did everybody go okay with that yesterday? Any issues, or we all made it through? Everybody came back from lunch pretty happy, so we did it all right. And then, that being said, the work of the day, the group has some work they're going to do this morning. And then at 9 o'clock, we are meeting with the other mathematics work group. And that concludes what I am here to share with you. Yes, Dr. Greg.
I was reflecting upon our discussions yesterday, and as I started reading from the very beginning of this Missouri Department of Higher Education initiative. And by the time I got to page 6, where it was talking about the competency models and assumptions and that, I thought, that might be a good way for us to actually put a few things down on paper in terms of what what we are expecting of ourselves from the sessions, as well as a place to put in some of the things that somebody mentioned, and then a few people mentioned yesterday about what some of the follow-up things are needed. Because when you get to the assumptions on page 7, it talks about what actually has to happen once people receive these recommendations that we are making. And so I think that would form the basis that we could then build all of our specific standards around, or essentially. With this as our these are our assumptions, here's what we want to do. Because it includes in there about the time that's investment in the mastery of these things was going to take. The things that you were talking about yesterday, if we were to put those on paper, first of all, not some of the points about competencies model, in other words, what our overall objective, what were we really trying to do? So I don't know, just a thought.
Any other thoughts from the group before we get to work?
I'm not sure. Yesterday, did we ever establish what a consensus would be for the group?
Maggie, do you mean like a mission statement, what our ultimate goal is?
originally, we were going to make a decision about something and we were gonna vote, or how would we determine the consensus of the group?
And
I actually would like to have a discussion and make a motion that we discuss with the moderator. I saw nothing in our discussions early yesterday morning that showed that we don't respect each other's time. Because of the process that we adopted, we agreed to with the moderator, it's making the conversation very stilted. Somebody can't answer the question that was asked to them until 3 people later, because it just makes, it's making it for me very hard to follow a conversation because it's not allowed to flow in a natural way. And I didn't see anybody stepping on each other's toes, and I saw people saying, oh, Julie had a question, and let her talk.
Kathy?
I agree with you in part, but I did see some people stepping on people's toes about different things. And especially if we're gonna work with a larger group, when the K-5 group comes in to work with us. I think you have to have somebody guide direction, at least for today, and then maybe beyond that, we can go and do something different. But I don't think it's been intrusive, and I get what you're saying. That sometimes I do, however, I don't necessarily agree with the other two. So if we think anything about that afterwards, then I will be fine with that.
I actually agree with Ann. If we agree to not interrupt, because there were interruptions yesterday morning, there were 3 different times I myself started to talk, and I was interrupted and I stopped. And then we had the discussion and we went to the moderator and that stopped, but I agree with that added to the cycle of the conversation. So if we are all cognizant of it and we are all respectful of each other, I completely agree. We're adults, we're here to do it, and I agree with you. And I would second your motion too.
At least for today, that's long group discussion.
Motion, I would second.
Margaret?
I like the moderator. I also agree with you, and I guess I'd just like to try it without the moderator for this morning, and let's see how it goes, and then if we need rediscuss or at noon, see how the morning goes. So I guess that would be an amendment. Yes. Accepting to.
I think in the material, I have some cards where you can make table tents, unless everyone knows everyone's name. That is your decision. Yes, Kevin? What about? Okay, probably.
I'm not very good with things. I like to do it with the other person.
Well, and then
Do we need to get a call or
you come forward and I'll see if I can locate.
Should we run a motion? Okay, all in favor of the motion to dismiss with the facilitator?
with the amendment.
This one is that.
Well, I don't know any accepted that.
I'm sorry, could you repeat it?
Yes, there was a motion made to dispense with the facilitator since we can all contain ourselves and move forward without one. Margaret wanted to add an amendment that said for this morning to see how it goes and reinstitute it if necessary. I don't know if Ann has accepted that amendment, so.
I don't know that you need an amendment. If you get to a point, somebody can make a motion to reinstate the moderator.
So you haven't accepted it, right? So we're voting on Ann's motion.
I think she means that,
I know what she means, but what I'm saying is it's up to her to accept it. She doesn't have to accept that amendment. So we're voting on Ann's motion. Okay? So all in favor of Ann's motion to dispense with the facilitators, signify by raising your hands so Jay can count. Against? Abstain? Okay. Sorry, you were up here.
Does anybody have that big marker?
Oh, yeah. We got some. I don't know.
I'm not marking it.
Ann, I think, was asking what constitutes consensus. And, I think that's a good point for discussion. I mean, does it mean a simple majority, or what sort of super majority does it, for there actually to be a consensus on a given point? And I think that's a good point of discussion for us. I think the last one, the first group, we weren't unanimous on. So I think it is good to have that discussion with this concept.
What does constitute?
You know, I think the consensus is more than the majority. And so I think we're heading towards like 3/4 of those present, or 2/3 of those present, or something like that. To me, that I would say that would constitute a majority. And, you know, consensus.
Along the same lines, what constitutes a quorum?
Well, I think that the quorum is pretty well defined as at least half the members present.
Half the members present. Okay.
50% plus one.
50% plus one.
So in our case,
Quorum.
no,
And then,
consensus.
3/4 for consensus.
Now, those fractions may have to go to the elementary.
A consensus then would just be of the people present, is that correct? True.
Yes. So anyone? Yeah, no.
Any other discussion on that? Do we all accept that?
Which one?
Both.
Oh, I threw out 2/3 and 3/4.
Yeah.
Sorry, Fred.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just heard 3/4. I didn't.
Should we have some discussion, maybe about that, 2/3 or 3/4 of the people that are present?
Again, I guess I would just offer up, you know, as a person who does get prior to you know, we're gonna have to stick with whole numbers of people here, so I don't know if there's gonna be much difference between those two, and since we're gonna be, since we still have, or, you know, 12, so we still have 5 more people that have not, come into the group. So, the total number and the quorum number and what not to be is all, we're recommending to do some quick calculations of what they are, but I would, right, I would say, you know, a consensus is just, you know, that is something that, you know, people are in favor of, you know, more than half the people are in favor of, and then there's another group that at least can live with it. So, I don't know if it's.
Yeah, and also the instances when I work on consensus, it's well over 50%, because 50-50 split, still have a major split on that. So I think that we really need to work on trying our best to build that consensus. And I like what you said too, that I may not agree with everything, but can I live with it?
Right.
Be classified.
And I can see that as a way to, you know, obviously consensus means something different than supermajority to me. So that was mine. How I can see.
I assume when you're done with our portion of the television standards and we've got the document that we would require a vote of all 17 members of this group, not just the people who have to be present. Make some sort of arrangement that if you can't vote, if you can't be here to vote, that you, to me, when you present something final, it should be the entire group as a presentation.
I think there might not be, or there could not be maybe 17, maybe there's only 16 appointed, maybe they really can't appoint, you know, that 17th person. So,
This committee, I believe this committee is fully constituted at this point. I just think that the official convocations haven't been done. But, as far as I know, it's going to be accepted.
and I did not find that information last night that all positions had been filled, so it's just, yeah.
Heather Hamill's like still on this website. And I was notified like 90%, so. Right, that's what I'm saying, there's still a blank on there, so do you know which
Members
member
are
appointed you?
Yeah, the speaker goes.
And,
You might contact his office, ask him to submit a name.
yeah, so that, I don't think there's any from Speaker of the House.
He'll be done.
Somewhere in the next year, we'll have.
And I was at our one, six, I just think it would be nice if we have a list of everyone on our work list.
So can we come to a consensus? Well, 2/3, 3/4?
2/3. I'm having strong feeling either way.
2/3 of the people present, and we were finding consensus.
Do we need a motion on that?
Should we actually make
Make it official.
it official?
Do you want to drop that? Or we
I
need to?
think, she made it, and I'll second it.
But the good of the group, Jay is keeping record, so when you make a motion and a vote, he needs that information.
I move that in order to hold a meeting, a quorum will be constituted as at least 9 members of the work group, which is 50% plus 1. A consensus will be defined as 2/3 of those present at the meeting.
I second.
Discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Hey, we can sense that, Jay.
And I don't know if I should facilitate or if I'm sorry.
I think we did it in that space. I think we got it.
I should leave. Did you catch one of the comments?
Oh, no, that's what I saw your hand raised, excuse me.
That's okay.
That's what I was saying, I was just curious why you were so fixed.
Because I don't think we should put a specific number on, I think it's not necessary, and I think it's counterproductive to have an actual
Were there any abstentions by the way, guys? No abstentions?
So your discussion was, you just don't like a specific number, like, and just, and that's okay.
Yeah, that was my sense. I mean, I'm in the category, we still have a consensus because I'm definitely in the category of I can live with it, if people prefer it, but I'm not going to vote for it, I'm going to vote against it because I think that being too mathematical about things is the wrong way to go. And I should be about policy, not numbers, but yeah.
Good point, good point. So, because we brought that up, we heard those were good things, I think that what we were gonna try to do, tell me if I'm wrong, what we were gonna try to do this morning is, before the interview came in, were we going to look at the documents that we were gonna review last night and talk about that, or am I wrong on that?
I think we were going to ensure that we had the different documents together, and unfortunately, I was not able to get into Dropbox to do that, so I don't, there's only 2 documents that I was actually able to, and one I completed completely, and the other one I got to start on.
So which document did you?
Well,
This one?
this right here that I started on for 6.
Okay, well, and did everybody get a chance to look at the map? Because I think we're really gonna focus on the map portion of it.
There's one, I didn't have a lot of time because of the driving. I enjoy driving locally.
Good thing.
But, I did, send to Nancy my feedback on one concept in both of the documents, and I think it would probably be good, I'm not sure if it would be, the only thing is when the other group comes in, I'm not sure if it would be appropriate to discuss, it might be more appropriate to look at those things, down, just as an example. And I sent it to Nancy because I don't know how to do Dropbox either, and I'm hoping she'll teach me how. And, yeah, I had 5 sheets of paper in my printer, that's all I had. And so I printed up hard copies, and Nancy has it in the Dropbox, and maybe later or something we could show. But could I share this with everybody now, and we could share?
May I say something, please? And that is, I put you all as view in Dropbox rather than edit, because sometimes when we share with a large group, people take things out to view and forget to put it back in.
Yeah.
And I just wanted it to be there for all members. It's not
And
that.
that's kind of why I haven't really tried to learn it yet, because I was afraid that once I got in there, I'd mess something up,
The only person I put his editing in was Jay, and that's because if he wants to drop minutes in for us or things like that. And everyone else I just put as view. It wasn't disrespecting you.
Right, yeah.
And when you view it, doesn't mean you can't upload it and save it someplace else. But I know I work with Dropbox a lot, and what usually happens is people that don't want to drag all the files out and then nobody sends them.
Right, so is everybody here, comfortable with Dropbox? Because am I the only one that doesn't know how to use it, or?
I have a problem with that, and I may not be able to.
So we
do
have a
that
lot of people that can
because of
help
my-
us. So there's 4 people, you don't need to show me right now.
Yeah.
But it would be really good if we all.
I'm emailing all this stuff to you right now.
Yeah,
I can just forward those emails to you and then.
Or everybody if you want, I don't know what I asked them to be here. But anyway, this is, can you guys share?
Okay, so.
I kind of worked.
Oh, thank you, yeah. I just don't have a lot of time for
Good, we didn't need, see, we saved paper.
There you go.
It was a good thing that I was out there. Would you like a hard copy? I don't think it, but anyway, that is, what I did is I just changed the form a little bit, or tried to format it because I wasn't working with the actual document. And the two things that we were looking at last night, I just took one topic from the curriculum alignment initiative at the top, and then I took the same topic to look at from the Common Core document. And so, at our level, several people would understand I have a few concerns about that particular topic. In the Common Core, the topic is limited to phase 2, phase 10, phase E, where, to me, that would only be considering certain points, certain values that they would have the understanding of. Whereas now in my Algebra 2 classes, I currently teach what was written in the Curriculum Alignment Initiative. I teach that currently in Algebra 2, although it is, it was actually in the engineering part, I think. But on the top of that page there, in the Curriculum Alignment document, what page should I put? It's not on
53.
53, exactly, that would be in the
Yeah, so, it's put in the engineering on this one. So I'm assuming that was because they were thinking that it was a higher level concept, but to understand logarithms thoroughly, I believe that the students do need to know how to move from exponential functions to logarithmic functions, as was described in the curriculum alignment initiative.
So, I mean, my comment to that would be, I don't think that's excluded in the Common Core. I think the point on number 4 you're talking about here is that you can use any kind of logarithm to solve an exponential equation. And so it's focusing on the ones that we use most often and the ones that we have technology to work with. But I agree with you, but I don't think either one, any of these are excluding looking at logarithms and other bases. I think it's just.
So do you, yeah, I wasn't sure what the interpretation of that would be. So you're saying that you think that the intent of the Common Core was to fully recognize that relationship?
Oh, yeah, I think if you look at I don't know if you ever looked at the progressions document, but that it expands on what gives examples. I mean, that's the.
I didn't interpret it that way when I read the Common Core.
Yeah, the Common Core is like most standards. It's a skeleton, and so you have to look further.
And that's the thing. I mean, you have discrete pieces of information, and as learners, we all need a clear understanding of how that's to be used.
Sure, that's why the progressions were written. But I mean, that's the case with the GLEs. It's the case with these things. You just find the hierarchy, the report from the coordinating board, and they're all skeletons that have to be fleshed out. One of the things in the Common Core is the appendix that fleshes out some of that. But the progressions are the documents that I've gone to help teachers prepare because it gives examples of what they're talking about. And I don't think there's a problem with any of this stuff if you look at that, because that's the gist of what they're doing.
And I don't know what progressions documents are, what Bob's explaining.
I'm not sure that everybody views them.
Do you want me to put it in the Dropbox?
Well, like what he was talking about, that interpretation piece between what is on the paper and what will occur, or what the intention is for the learning in the classroom, it's really a communication piece of the information, and, which that is what professional development is all about in any avenue, whether it's Missouri Learning Standards or in business or, just, so I think we could do better, and I don't mean that was bad. What I mean is that I think we could improve upon that by being more clear and maybe in our explanation.
And I think some of that is to interpretation and the local control of interpretation. I think it's just a foundation, it's a base, and if a district wants to go above and beyond that, I applaud them. But to look at just the entry competencies, maybe for the ones that you referred to on page 52 or 53, there definitely is a need for some students to do that. I'm not sure it's for all students in the state. So I like to focus on the ones, that were earlier in the math section, and then keep the others in mind.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that, when I started teaching this briefly, I started with Algebra 1 level, geometry, Algebra 2, pre-calculus, trigonometry, calculus now. So I had a different view when I first started when I was teaching Algebra 1 than I do now. And having had students like when you're teaching a student something in the classroom, you always have to keep in mind what information that they've been exposed to. And exposure doesn't necessarily mean that they've incorporated it into their tool set. And I think it's what is concerning now to me more, because I teach Algebra 2 and Calculus, I am concerned that pertinent information might not reach the student from their understanding of algorithms.
I think one of the things here is whether you teach something for a general principle and then with specifics to apply it. And to me, the way it's written here for the Common Core, it is only those specifics. And I'm afraid that the generality will not be there in terms of that. So I think that we have to make certain that the language includes the general before you get to the specifics.
Yeah, and I guess I would add to this too, somebody who came into K-12 with a lot of math background first, I was really appalled at the lack of clarity in the standards, at that time. And since then, I've seen potentially getting better and I look at those and I hear, so what I'm hearing is, Lisa raises a question and I'm getting 2 or 3 different people giving answers that I would consider to be different. And without, deciding who's right or who's not, or whether in fact it is just a local decision that people just make, however they see fit at the time, we don't have to settle for, standards where you do them and then you gotta go over here and consult with something else and then flip back to the appendix or then call somebody and say, this is what I think it means, what do you think it means? And have conversations and have districts come to different conclusions. We can just say what they're supposed to do in clear language, and I believe that we can do that. And it's required in all other fields, and I think we should consider it a requirement for ourselves.
Can I ask you a question? Lisa said some stuff, some things are red and math. Can you help me understand, when you all use the term integrated math?
What that means?
Help me understand what that means.
And you know how, I'm not sure how you had math, but when I went to Rockwood High School, I had Algebra 1. Sophomore, I had geometry because they didn't have calculus pathway when I was in high school. Then there was Algebra 2. Then there was either trig or pre-calc or whatever you want to call it. And those are very separate and defined courses, what will be in each. But a number of schools have gone to kind of flowing those together because there should be some coherence there. So they mix the algebra and geometry that first year and the second year and the third year. So by the time you're finished with all 3, you still have the same content, or essentially that, but they're weaving the geometry in with the algebra that should be the first year and showing applications back and forth throughout those 3 years in very general terms. Does that make sense?
So it's not integrated between, like, as you said, there's engineering there in the CAI report. It's not integrated with the other subject matter.
No. And also, the answer that Nancy gave, that's what I was, the answer was 5 years ago too, when some districts, including Columbia, were doing that. But in actual fact, in a lot of districts, it's a completely separate math track. They call it integrated math, but really it's for the non-so-muchers. And if I can just be direct, it's for the kids that they don't put it on. Excuse me, but I have the Springfield School District does it this way exactly. Now, maybe they say that that's not what it's created for. That's how it works out in practice. And the parents in that district know.
And I think there's several people down here that have their hands up on maybe.
Well, I want to go back to what you said to begin with, because we could talk about integrated math. That's at a quarter right now, but you were talking about the standards of the Common Core being not clear to the faculty, to the teachers. I would agree with that. And that's what I've been doing professional development with teachers for 2 or 3 years now, trying to help them understand what it looks like. But I can tell you that years ago, before that, it was the GLEs, when we did professional development, teachers understand the GLEs, and before that, it was the show me standards, and before that, it was the MMATs, or whatever we call them. I mean, it's always that way when you make that set of standards. So I would suggest, if that's really what we think is most important here, let's make that our task. Let's go through the Common Core and let's clarify it, and if there's things we don't like about it, let's adjust it, but let's don't get off on 100 other things. If we want to do that, we could really do something good here, come up with a set of standards, and if we can make it where teachers understand it better, it will be a great thing.
Right. I want to have a conversation about that, but yesterday we talked about we're going to have some ideas for the meeting. Before this other group comes in. I have been on lots of committees, code review committees where we only have one document, building construction code. It takes us a year, and all we're doing is looking at changes in a document, we'll come up with several documents. We're probably talking about lots of meetings. What's our plan when we get together with these other people?
And I completely agree with what you bring out, but I do just want to say that, this idea that teachers always need help understanding standards, I think that is false. I think the GLEs were a little, strange in some cases, come to find out that, understanding representations of patterns actually just means scientific notation when they could have just said that. That's a little weird. I'll grant, I would have needed somebody to tell me that that's what they put on the test, so whatever. But, there have been other standards that I can read them and I know exactly what they're saying. I don't have to flip back to some other document and look at this and look at that and go sign up for some PD thing and, read all this, unpacking this and unpacking that. I think you can have standards that teachers can look at and they can understand, and I think that does have to be our ultimate goal.
Yeah, I was going to say, I agree with both of you, and what Bob said, really resonated with me about actually we do just go through the Common Core document and look at how we can make each of those obvious. Let's make the unobvious obvious, because when we want to truly help all children in all districts across Missouri, many districts don't have the resources to do all that unpacking and professional development that you're speaking of.
Well, Bob wasn't here for our discussion yesterday. The reason why we have the different documents is because it was suggested that there are some standards that are actually better than Common Core, and why not start from those that got the higher grade from independent source? And so that's why we have the 4 documents in front of us, so that we can have those to look at. And 2 of them are essentially the details of everything. That's the Common Core and the Massachusetts year 2001. The other ones are end product standards, the ACT and this document right here. And so that's where they came from, okay? And so in terms of David's question, what do we need to, essentially, that sort of an approach is what we had agreed on yesterday. And so the idea when they come in, it was to ensure that there's an integrated approach or a smooth handoff between their program and our program, and therefore we wanted to be at least have one meeting where we all talk about those exact what our approach is going to be, and also to set up the times when we are going to meet. And that was one of the things that we still need to discuss yet before they come in here, because there are some of us with a real problem with the way that it was sort of dictated to us when those meetings were going to be, as opposed to when we as a group decided it's fine for them to set up the first one, but after that it's our responsibility, and we should take on that responsibility. David, does that?
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you. Everybody's saying really good points. I think, I'm really comfortable with this right now, so. I think when we talk about like examining documents, and we talk about Bob's work with PD, and we talk about what teachers need. You know, what we're really talking about in this whole thing, in my view, is that we're generally talking about the communication in our entire state's learning environment regarding math, in particular for this on this topic that I brought up. But and I think, you know, I brought this topic up because I saw that I felt like there was a difference, and Bob explained that he didn't think there was a difference in what he's been doing in PD. And so what I'm thinking is it's really important to be getting feedback. You know, like you're a teacher in a classroom, the most important piece is getting feedback from your student on if they're understanding what you're teaching, getting the feedback. And I think a real important piece for our Department of Education, for our state representatives, is to get the feedback from the group, and for us all to feel free to, you know, discuss openly sources of information and share those sources with our work group peers, and in a productive way so that it can stay focused. I think it's really important that we, you know, consider while we're doing it how our work could benefit the schools, and how, you know, if a teacher in the classroom felt they needed help with a standard, and how they would receive that help from people that were able to help, you know. So, I mean, there's just so many, you know, it's a really broad topic, and we all come to it from different perspectives, which I think is great.
I think, from what I'm hearing, we need to create a mission statement. Is our mission to revise the Common Core? Is our mission to create a benchmark of an excellent standard? What is our mission? Do we want, what do we want to accomplish? Otherwise, we keep having conversations and maybe here, and we need to have a clear mission of what our goal is.
It was Bob and Tiffany and June, just for your my perspective.
I worked at a university that's been years making mission statements, and so I'm not a fan of making mission statements, but I agree with what you're saying. And I actually go back to what you said. I haven't read everything you all said yesterday. It's very good. I seem to read too. Anyway, so I do know what I'm talking about, I guess, but and I apologize for not being here. I didn't know I was on this. But anyway, I agree with what you said, and I think whether we spend time coming up with a mission statement, to me, the reason we're here, as I read HB1490, is that there was a disagreement here about the way Common Core was implemented. And I'll be honest with you, I can understand that completely. I think it was, you know, the way it happened and everything, okay. But to me, our most efficient way of doing anything is to start with the Common Core, because that's what schools have been working with now for several years. And if you're here, and if you were chosen because you don't like it, this is the chance we can fix it for us. We can make it ours. And I think that would be the most efficient thing we could do, is to make it to where teachers understand it, and also at the same time make it where we think it's what's best for students. And if we would spend our time doing that, and as you said, not going off on every other direction, because, I mean, all these documents, the Massachusetts thing, we could find 20 more, you know, but I mean, this is what we were brought here for, to me, is to fix this, so that it's what Missouri wants. And it seems like that would be the easiest thing to do. If there are things in there you don't like, this is your chance. We can fix it. We can change it and make it the way you want it.
Okay, so whether we like Common Core, whether we don't like Common Core, those are currently the standards that we as teachers have to teach. Okay, so currently, whatever we come up with, we are changing that Common
I mean, we're changing that, because those are Missouri standards. So, anything that we change or revise, we're revising the Common Core, yes, because that's our current standards, and we are making, whether it's new standards or whatever, and if there's problems with Common Core, because I'm not gonna say it's a perfect document. There are things that you can change about it, absolutely. And yes, I think it's time to pull from different resources in fixing that. But we are revising Common Core for Missouri because that's what we're teaching right now. That's what we're teaching for the next 2 years. And as a teacher, to have teachers in classrooms with kids every single day teaching this for 2 years while trying to figure out something completely different that they're going to start teaching in 2 more years, that takes away from time that I should be spending with those kids.
Not to mention the money that administrators have to spend for a professional development.
Should be stand for Come
Yeah, so I think there's a number of things that need to get put on our record. And so maybe right now is a good time to do that. So, you know, one of the things that happened is there was a bill submitted to the legislature that, you know, and there was consolidation and different steps. And a number of people came in and testified either for or against that bill. And a number of those said people are in this room right now. And I think we all pretty much know who is who. So I think it should be noted that there are people in this room who testified against the bill. There are also people who were for it, but folks, it passed, and it's the law now. And the second thing is, these work groups were to be convened by DESE, and they did do that in the sense that they chose 6 dates for us to come. Those dates were set even before the applications for the people that were chosen by the legislative members could be taken care of because of the fact that the legislature was not in session. So these dates were set by the people who were, in effect, the DESE people. Now, I personally am very grateful to be part of this work group. I think it's wonderful that we have parents and other people that are not typically represented at these things when DESE convenes people to work on standards or people to work on SBAT questions or whatever it is. When DESE chooses the people that they want to work with, who, you know, have a, you know, working relationship, you know, that are chosen, you know, at least in part in many cases because of their own beliefs and the things that they publish. Or, you know, other reasons. I think that, you know, it is good that we have opened up these work groups to other kinds of people. I also know that there are a lot of people who feel like they have many things invested into Common Core. Now, if you're a teacher in a classroom, you might feel like you've been spending time, you know, getting ready to convert your standards over. At the upper end where I teach, what you have to do to convert to that is pretty much nothing, so it's not really a problem. In that sense, you know, I would like to say that there are also some people here that are more invested than others. If part of what you do in your career is educating people on how to use Common Core, then naturally you're going to come into this work group and say, well, what we should be doing is reviewing Common Core. I know that we got an email from DESE that said, you know, here's a document, and it was the one Lisa based this one off of, where you put down the page number or the section number of Common Core that you have a question about, what your question is, and, you know, how to, you know, take notes when you get your questions answered. And so that email refers to how we're going to review the current standards. And no, that's not how standards are written. Prior to Common Core, there was a document pending that a lot of districts had already put a lot of work into and used. It didn't come right out of the GLEs. It didn't look like the GLEs. It didn't sound like the GLEs. And it has nothing in common with what's there now. They do change it, put line and finger, and you decide that you don't want to change it, that dramatically, but it has happened before and it will almost certainly happen again. So, with that said, I would like to additionally comment that the statute actually provides that we should develop and recommend. It does not say review the Common Core. And finally, we know that the Common Core has become extremely unpopular with the public. Over 60% of the public is against it. There is one, and 76% of teachers. So there is at least one wealthy suburban school district near to where I live that told their teachers, their staff, on the first day of school this year when the teachers came back in, get the words Common Core off of every single thing that you have. Don't use Common Core. Don't tell the parents, you know, anything we have. It's all done. Things, you know, and I, of course, I'm not some other group of people that, you know, never told, you know, find out exactly what they're thinking on all this. But I think if we just, you know, and one other thing I want to put on the record is that there have been rumors around me since the day this bill passed that Desi was going to see to it that this just got to be a whitewash of Common Core. So I want to have some kind of record saying that, you know, at least that information has been put out to this group, and, you know, that if that's all we're going to end up doing, you know, then I think that is a betrayal of public trust.
Deborah was next, and Yolanda was next.
She was before, I think. She
I
got
Sorry.
had a really brief comment. I mean, the model of continuous improvement is pretty simple. You take what you do and then you work to improve it. And if improving, that means that also, like, you know, including other documents to find ways to improve it. I mean, that's the most efficient way, it seems, to do something. It doesn't mean we're betraying anyone. It's just the model of continuous improvement, which is adopted by many school districts across the states and some of the best organizations.
Oh, I was just going to,
This isn't going to be a 20 minutes.
no.
I didn't have a meeting
Tell me.
yesterday.
No, real quick, I was just gonna say, that I was thinking about that idea of continuous improvement. And, also Tiffany, how, you've been working on the Common Core, right? For a few years, working with it in your classroom. And what do you teach?
Something.
Okay, so in my experience in Algebra 2, it hasn't actually, Common Core hasn't actually changed the classroom practice at this point. And so, you know, I think we have, along the idea of continuous improvement, if Algebra 1 or 7th and 8th grade, you know, middle school or whatever, you know, that stands. If this is has been affected quite a bit, and you know, maybe not, I'm not sure about geometry, I haven't taught it in a while. And Algebra 2, my experience has been that it has not really changed the classroom practice yet here in Missouri. And so along continuous improvement, you know, we want to make sure that everything is improved. We all agree on that, I'm sure. And, you know, it's like what we're talking about is what would help the schools in math education. I'm not talking about Common Core in particular, I'm talking about in math education. Well, you know, if something's introduced here and the child is here, then the child, you know, that could affect their experiences later on in their learning experience. So I think, I mean, from my perspective, like I said, I haven't had a lot of PD that has changed my classroom practice yet.
you know, I understand where there are concerns, that's all I was gonna say. So I think it's that feedback loop, and I think that, you know, like, in the whole state, and it really doesn't matter if you're talking about integrated approach or, you know, the traditional understanding, because what we're talking about is improving the whole system. I mean, that's what our mission, you know, our end goal, I think, for everybody here is that idea. So.
And what I was going to say is, I am the person who did testify for the Common Core. And let me tell you why. I taught the intervention classes for 6 years. My first year at Valley Park, as I said, it had not been adopted by the state of Missouri. But I knew I had kids who were not getting what was out there with the GLEs. My classes were filled with students who had not made advanced proficient. That's all I had. I had below basic and basic. And then we put in my class as a second math class above them. I decided to try out the Common Core and narrow my focus, make it very cohesive for them, and up the rigor. So even though I had 6th grade students, I was teaching them things that they would need in 6th grade, 7th grade, and I was making them fluent, making them have discussions, making them have journals, write and talk about mathematics using the Common Core. And my results the first year, and I'm not breaking my arm to pat myself on the back, but we were in a district where I told you there was a high level of diversity, of poverty, of influx from the city of St. Louis, etc. I had 17 students in one class and 14 in the other. This is what I had. It's a very small school district. 2 classes. Of those 31 students, 28 of them became proficient or advanced, and the other 3 we got credit for their growth. Now, that did not happen every single year, and my numbers went up to maybe inch to 19 or so in those classes. But every single year, I had at least 70% of those who were not proficient become proficient. And so to me, I did do that. And so that is what I was explaining when I testified before both the House and the Senate, because I thought it was very important for them to know that. I thought it was important for them to know that those students who would not even discuss math were now becoming leaders in their regular, what they call regular math classes. I wasn't a regular teacher. They considered me second teacher. Those teachers came back to me and said, they are now the leaders. When we go to do something, they're the ones who are leading the discussions. They're the ones who are volunteering to be group leaders now. We couldn't even engage them before. So it was a highly successful program, not just because of me. I'm not saying that. Very supported by the administration and by the math department. So I see it as a very positive thing. My last thing is, I make the motion that we do have our mission to explain and to the current standards to teachers as a form of professional development to help them. I think that that's would be a great mission statement.
We're having a great discussion, but you also.
I know, that's why I made the motion, because we've got comments.
Well, I don't really need to have.
Can't you see if there's a second first?
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to respond too, and I agree, I would second your motion, because I want you to know, since we're putting things on the record, I don't have anything to do with Bessie. I teach at a private institution, I'm a math professor. I work with teachers in middle school, elementary, high school, people who are going to be teachers. When the standards when the Common Core came out, I thought, oh great, here we go again. You know, I mean, that's education, we're always in change, you know that. But as I started looking at them, and I didn't really like the way it happened either, but as I started looking at them, I started working with them, and I've been working with the Common Core for 3 years now, going through, making sure I understand what's going on. It's good, because it makes it more focused in each grade level. It's not that it's completely different than what we've been doing. It's not. It's just a way of reorganizing to make it more efficient and better for teachers and better for students, because it focuses more on their understanding as opposed to just a bunch of little bitty skills that they learn at different times. That's what the GLEs were doing too, but this has made it a little bit better. And I'm not just saying we should start there and look at that because I'm trying to railroad us into doing that. I think that's the best thing we can do. And the things that you quoted about people not liking the Common Core, I can understand that because I didn't like it either before I looked at it. And so, I mean, I think it's our opportunity. If there's things we don't like, let's fix it. Let's make it Missouri standards. We can do that.
Right, so I would like to recommend that in New York, which has implemented the Common Core and is far ahead of where we are, with the black and white achievement gap has nearly doubled in math. Now, I teach in a school where the population is 80% children of color, 80% free and reduced, of course, is not the same 80%. We've been, hearing about the Common Core, looking at that too. It is not the right fit for our kids. It's not. And as far as the public dislikes it, a year ago, a lot of people had never heard of it. Now, the more they find out, the more they dislike it. And I think that's going to continue. I know lots and lots of math teachers that absolutely hate it. They don't hate it because they don't understand it. They hate it because they do understand it. And I think a lot of them have been cowed into, being afraid to speak because of all the money that's been pushed out to try to support it. And I really think, yes, we are going to be betraying the public if we are not starting out with an open mind. I don't know about this model of continuous improvement, but what I do know is that if you want to have a good product, you have to start out with something that people find across the board acceptable. I almost didn't apply to be on this group because I saw how unfriendly the schedule that was set up was to actual working teachers. I made very, very major efforts to be here yesterday and today. And I will probably do that again. But, the idea that, we would just say to the public, sorry, we just want to doctor up Common Core and try to fix its flaws. I think that's just crazy. I think we should not even seriously consider doing something like that.
One thing, Julia would love to see the document about, we talked about this a little bit yesterday about the black and white issue, so if you could find, I have it, okay, I'd love to see it because I went online last night and I tried to find it, couldn't find it, and did find that Missouri NAACP supports the Common Core document, so why they support it. I mean, it's both. I mean, I think we're going to find evidence. We can find evidence on both sides. We're math people. So we can find evidence on both sides. And so I think we have to look at the evidence on both sides to see what works and doesn't work. The other point about you say teachers that hate working with the Common Core, I work with multiple school districts. Okay, and there was some confusion, I believe, there's some confusion about the standards. I totally agree with that. Looking at that and what Bob said about implementation, there's no disagreement there. I don't know of anybody in the room that would disagree with possible implementation of the way that would happen. But the teachers that I work with and that are getting this professional development aren't, you have some people that don't like it, well, of course, but I don't hear the negativism about it that you do. Now, perhaps we work in different people, different circles, but you're always going to hear people complain. And also the 60%, when you talk about 60% of the people that use the Common Core, when I sit down and talk to people that say they're against it, and I ask them if they have read the document, have they gone back to the document, and the people that I have asked that question, and Craig, I haven't asked everybody because they didn't, nor any of us in here, not one of them has read the document. Okay, now that doesn't mean that they have, that there are a number of people that have read the document that dislike it. But I think we have to realize that there are both sides, and the 60% number, do we know all those people have really read the document itself and made those judgments themselves, besides outside sources telling them what to think? Because I think that's on both sides, people telling people what to think. Margaret?
I do, when we use numbers, that's the beauty of being statisticians, But I have found articles that say the majority support the Common Core. So I think numbers are always in question. And I have several people, districts, teachers, that are doing fine with the Common Core. Students are doing fine with the Common Core. So to say that most don't, again, I think we have to be careful around qualifiers because there's two sides to the issue, depending on.
I'm not sure where Ann wants your hand was up in the
I just back to your comment about Bob, and just a general question for the group. Indiana had the exact same thought. We'll just fix what's in the Common Core. And what they ended up with was rated worse than what they had before and worse than the Common Core. So you're taking a real risk by saying, we'll just tweak it and fix it.
I did do some research on what's happening in New York, and some of the thoughts that are coming from there. And much of the criticism isn't on the Common Core standards, it's on the assessments that were created. So I don't think that we're here to create assessments. And one thing, just play devil's advocate, also perhaps the Common Core brought to light an achievement gap that was already there, rather than caused one.
Julie? Well, on the NAEP, they also, I mean, they did the black and white achievement gap split wide open on their local assessments, meaning their Common Core assessments, but the gap also went up on the NAEP, and that's not even a test. So, I mean, you have that data before and after. You know, the fact that the Common Core is making that gap is an actual fact. And while people may have the rights to their own opinion, they don't have the right to their own facts. Secondarily, I mean, you guys can talk about anecdotally that, you know, the teachers that you talk to, like Common Core, or the members of the public that you talk to haven't actually read it. I want to make 2 points, and again, maybe this is just for our record, but the fact is that you don't have to read them to dislike them. There are a ton of other reasons, many of which are totally legitimate, you know, to think that this is not the right standards for kids. And I mean, I can list, you know, a lot of those. And the second thing is, you know, 76%, 60% numbers came from a PDK Gallup poll. That's not anecdotal. That's not, you know, some kind of biased presentation. So again, that is just a statistic fact.
Okay.
Well, and you know, I know that to say that it's a fact, the Common Core caused this problem, it may have. Okay, but I don't think we know exactly what caused the correlation. It may have, but I think there has to be more work done before it. And it could be that that's really true. But I think just to say that, and I'm not sure that that's our purpose here either. I think we're getting way off task of where we need to be. And Bob was next and then Julie.
Yeah, your statement about you don't have to read them to know they're not good, that's my problem. That's why I wish we could just do it, because, you know, if you know they're bad before you read them, how do you know that? I mean, so you don't like the people who wrote them, you don't like their purpose of doing it, you don't like this, that doesn't mean the math is bad. If the math is bad, let's fix it. But it's not, I don't know anybody on the group who wrote the Common Core. I have no relationship with any of them. I'm not a proponent of what they did. I just have looked very deeply at what they did, and I think there's good stuff in it. And so I don't know why we can't, I mean, I'm the same way. It was hard for me to be here today. I have students that are missing my instruction today. I gave a whole day to this, and I'm assuming they're going to be given a lot more to it. And I get nothing out of it. But I want to be here because I want to do what's best for students in our state. And I think if we don't get down to doing it, we're going to just talk about what we're going to do forever.
Well, I did say yesterday, and I'll say again, I don't think we do understand the mechanism by which the Common Core has opened up this achievement gap. And because we don't understand the mechanism, we have no way of going about just fixing it and tweaking it. You know, so just the idea, you know, that you're going to be able to just go for and review it and fix it, I think is really very naive. And you know, and in response to to Bob's suggestion, then you just have to look at it and see if it's bad math. I think, I know it's very easy to make an argument that it is, but even if it's not, there's no process. There's no reason for us to think that an untested product is going to work here. There's no process for people here to buy in, and that's what I think. You know, I wanted to like it. I mean, my story is different. I wanted to like it. I heard that fewer topics done more deeply, and I wanted to like it. I thought I was going to. And so, you know, I'm pretty smart and I know the math. And the more I looked at it, the more I realized, you know, this is not going to be a good thing for kids. And of course, a lot of the bad stuff that's been, you know, out there about it, people say, well, that's not Common Core. But it is, because people don't know what to do. And I don't know how you can fix it. I don't see any way in the world to do that.
A couple things. First of all, a document in and of itself cannot cause achievement gap. There are teachers that are implementing that. There are teachers that are doing things like that. So you have a lot of variables. Now, could the misunderstanding of the Common Core and the implementation of it from there have led to an achievement gap? Yes, possibly. But there's a lot of different variables going into that, so I don't think we can just say that it's just the Common Core. And you keep mentioning that you would easily argue that there's bad math. Great, let's get into it. Show us where there's bad math so we can fix it and change it and maybe pull from those other sources that are so good, because we do want our kids to learn. We do want our kids to know math when they leave. But sitting here and arguing politics over Desi did this and other groups, because there are other groups here as well, are pushing this agenda. I'm just a teacher. I want what's best for my kid. I took days away from my kids today too. I'm willing to do that because we want to do what's best for them. And now I feel like we're wasting time arguing politics back and forth, and now my kids are missing out on me being there, and we're not getting anything accomplished.
And camping is next.
Well, did we have a motion to call the question on the table?
Yes.
Because I think we've gotten well away from what that was. And Jay, could you read that to us?
14 minutes ago, Nancy made a motion that the group has a mission statement that includes providing PD for teachers, and Margaret seconded the motion.
So should we vote on that?
Just point that I wanted to ask about. Is that the entire mission statement?
My mission statement, I'm sorry if I,
Because I mean, that's
what I said was that we should work from the Common Core document to explain the standards and then that would help us to provide, that would be a methodology to provide that PD is by the explanation, so that the motion that I intended, that I thought I made, that maybe the sentence didn't end because I did ramble, was that we start with the Common Core document, that we explain those standards. Is that what you seconded?
Yes.
So the question has been called.
So do we need to vote?
Yeah.
All those in favor? Okay. All those opposed? And abstain? Did you get it down, Jay?
Oh,
Who were you missing?
I have two.
That's what he knows.
Yes. I've got I think we could probably go back and forth all day long on that. Yesterday, at the end, I thought we had actually made some progress in terms of, we will have these documents, and who cares which one is the first one or the second one we're looking at, in terms of which was the primary and we're working off of that. I don't think that's an important thing. I think the important point is, and I think we started, and I thought that that's what we're going to do today, is we're going to first look at where that student is that we graduate from high school. What skills in mathematics does that student have? And that was the purpose of this document right here, okay? And then looking at that and how does that jive with ACT. So that is one thing. I think the second one is why I thought the sixth grade was a good point to start from in looking at the Common Core document, was because there, when you're looking at is what's the product that we're getting in from the other group to make certain that everything is going to be streamlined. So I thought that made a lot of sense in how to go about doing that. And I think if, the reason why I didn't go along with voting for your motion is because this is the document, okay? And I don't agree with that overall motion. I think we need to go into this without any feathers, any predispositions on this. And I think that's why, see, okay, here is where we want our students to end up. Let's decide on that first. Then we go, and then look at the different documents and say, okay, here is how we see these, along the lines of what Lisa did on that one. See, what can we work with, making certain that we have that. The only reason that my first statement was about the assumptions is that we get that information in there about we expect this to have to be implemented with the teachers and we want these things to go forward. And so I make a motion that we go back to do that type of approach.
Just a clarification from what we agreed upon at the end of the day yesterday.
Well, no, as implementation, we agreed upon yesterday.
Tell us what that is.
As implementation, so that we will start with this document right here in terms of understanding where we want students to end up at the end of their high school career in mathematics. Okay, that's what that, and then we can work back from it. When do we add those things in and work it out over the different years? The second thing is look at what do we expect the entry students to be like when they come into the sixth grade. Okay?
Based upon.
Well, it will be a combination of based upon both the Common Core document as well as the Massachusetts document. Right? Okay, and just use those and start off from those things, and using these assumptions that they have here, two of them in particular, remember on page 7, that we would want to make sure that as a preamble to anything we finally end up with, that there will be this genuine systems change of fix, make time, make progress, earnest, realistic timeline, necessary mastery of competence, et cetera, for the different ones here. So that as sort of the preamble to what our overall objective is. So something like that, I fully appreciate what people are saying, but rather not get back and forth on this time. And let's get forward and start meeting on this thing, as well as our schedule.
Not yet. There's a motion on the board. Has 2 seconds before we move on.
Is there a second?
Lisa?
Yeah, I think the reason that I chose that problem from both of the items that we agreed to do last night is because for me, it is an example of how I struggled with the Common Core document because like Julie, I wanted to like it. The reason that I struggled with the document was because on certain things, on certain concepts, I felt like the document was not well defined. I thought the concepts were not well defined. And I think that's what you're saying about Tiffany, about, I think a while ago you said that idea was that through the PD, the teachers are better understanding the concepts. I'm not going to say the Common Core. Because the reason I don't want to use the word Common Core when I talk about the concepts in our document is because that word, Common Core, for many people includes a lot of things in addition to the document, okay? Not outside of the document, but in addition to the document, okay? So, I thought it was really good that we left yesterday understanding all of us that we were going to look at the two documents. And, you know, that I think we all, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but I felt like we all were understanding, you know, and appreciate the work that Missouri educators have been doing so far to work with the Common Core standards. At the same time, I felt like that I was glad that we could take the time to view the Curriculum Alignment Initiative document also simultaneously, because that was also worked on by many Missouri educators at various levels for a period of time. And so I think that was a really good place to start. And, you know, it's just, there's a whole continuum here that can surround this work group mission, which I don't, we haven't established, but I think just the fact that we are understanding better all the perspectives of the people here on the work group is just really good.
You want that perspective.
Right, it's all about perspective, really.
I just have a comment about this document, but I have a question first, and you can answer for me, because I want to understand your motion. So your motion is that we start with this, and then we move to Common Core 6th grade, is that what you're saying?
The idea was, what are the end point, what's the beginning point?
Okay, so we start with this.
To end up with that's in addition to the ACT.
I think he's saying that we will consider that.
Yes,
No, I'm not saying we're adopting.
Yeah, no, I got a whole
We're gonna study this, and then we're gonna go to 6th grade and start there. I just want to know what I'm voting for.
Okay, what you're voting for is establishing a final point and a starting point.
Okay,
As the first thing.
But I want some direction as to how we're doing that. We're gonna use this document, and then we go to 6th grade Common Core. Is that right?
Well, 6th grade and all the documents associated with that, yes.
Okay, so my only comment, and if that's the motion, I'm for it because I'm ready to get to it. And I had lots of comments about this.
Yes, so do I.
But I'll hold this off.
But the whole idea is that we have a final
Okay.
Okay, call the question.
All in favor, raise your hand.
Your motion.
Capable babies. All opposed? Abstain? 813.
Abstains are real.
813, anyone disagree with the count?
Yeah.
Let's do her. Let's do thirds. I think 2/3 is 12, and I got 8.
I just want to comment, and this is my comment. I think it's a good place for us to start to look at, and I'm assuming you're talking about starting on page 25. Because that's the math entry competencies. And I know a little bit about how this came about, because this is my field of life.
Okay.
I mean, this was college professors. It was a humongous group that worked basically by email. Met maybe twice, and so here's my only problem with it. I don't think that anything on here is bad, but I don't think this is a direction for how you do standards for 6-12. Because it was a bunch of math professors saying, look at the title, entry-level course requirements. This is what we were asked to do. When you get a student in your college algebra class, because for 95% of the universities in Missouri, college algebra is the entry-level course. What would you like them to be able to do? And we went check, 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 and then we thought about it some over email, and we got rid of some checks. We asked them, this is a checklist. And so I don't think, because I've read this again, I was involved in it, I don't think there's anything in particular here that I see that Common Core, or for that matter, GLEs, would not have prepared students to do that. How well it prepares them to do it, because all these professors would say, well, I get a bunch of them, I can't do this. Okay. Well, the point is, this is a checklist, and it's a bunch of skills that I think you'll find, 95 to 99% of them are covered in both the GOEs and the Common Core standards.
Can I ask you for further clarification, because I too was a part of some of the beginning of that. There was initially intent to go further, is that correct?
Yeah.
So can you tell me what happened there?
Well, I think what happened was you had this big group of electronic stuff making checklists, and they narrowed down to a very small group who ended up putting this document together from that checklist, and I was not in that small group.
But was there a plan to further explain some of those or further define? Or this was the end result? This was the purpose?
Yeah, I think this is it.
And he was there.
And I was also a part of this committee when we were looking at the documents, duties, and it was, just what you said, the checklist. And it was mostly university folks. They got some input from high school folks, but not much. So.
Julie?
I sometimes teach college algebra at I've done it at UMKC, both as a dual credit class and also on campus, and also in the community college system in the City area. And one of the things I notice when I teach that is that curriculum is not that different from Algebra 2. It's as if we're expecting kids to learn everything in high school that they're going to need to know in college algebra, so that at the college level they're not, really doing anything. But a bigger point is this: college algebra, and I get that we're in Missouri, but there are schools in Missouri. They're usually private and a lot more expensive, where they don't offer college algebra, and they're never going to do that again. Somebody pointed out to me, when I made the first comment that I made, a gentleman who has done a lot of consulting work, who's from California, he said, Julie, out on the coast, we don't even have college algebra as a class. That is not what, you should be preparing your students to do. So again, we are in Missouri, and most of our kids are going to go to public schools, and so I get that that's part of, what they're going to need. But I also think that we have to be aware that some of our kids are not going to be doing that. They are going to go to these more, academically advanced schools where, they want to look at mathematical thinking, they want to look at, not just the let's all go to engineering school, everybody has to take calculus, approach that, statistics, discrete math, finite math, those kinds of things, have a place in an educated society, and that it's not just, this.
Two comments. First of all, way back that day, there was no such thing as college algebra. All we did was we just went directly into calculus when we went to college. And second of all, it doesn't make any difference what the kid does. But the only purpose of this right here is to establish what do we want our graduating math student, high school student, to have in math. That's the point. And whether and all this is a checklist or standard. I mean, that's what we want. Do we have these different things? And we may phrase them differently. So it's not just like a checklist, but it's standards usually are a checklist. Okay? So I don't see what let's start from this and say, how do we modify this to get to that student?
Well, I think when you use the words, it doesn't make a difference. I think it kind of bothered me because I thought what Julie offered was very important to consider in the work, because you know, I spend most of my day in my classroom with students that will be using calculus. And but I also spend part of my day with students that are in Algebra 2, and the age range goes from 10th grade to 12th grade in the same class of Algebra 2 students. Some of those students will be going to college and will only need college algebra for their graduation requirement from college for their interest area. Some of those, even though, you know, they may be a junior in Algebra 2, they have aspirations in a field that's going to be more mathematics. They're in the same classroom. Some of those seniors in the class may not, you know, we have people that are going into the workforce directly that are learning skills and technical, local technical school, you know, going part day in the classroom, part day and then in the vocational technical area. So, you know, I think it is important. I think it does matter that we consider, you know, because we are talking about the best education for all of our learners. And
I was next one, I just want to say, Julie, I wish you had been on the team when we were looking at these documents, because the same thing about college algebra is the same as algebra 2, was something that I fought for and could not get them to change their minds from doing that. So I wish you had been there to invite me. Well, I don't think we knew each other at that time. I was like, bring Julie, because she'll help her fight this back. But the other thing I would like to ask the group, I really need a restroom break. It's been an hour and a half. Is anybody, can we take like a 5 minute break and come back? Is that okay? And is that project? I mean, I just have. Sorry. It's all to go around. And I think
They have the results on we have 60% of the people have some kind of beyond that.
Right.
So not necessarily the problem. Yes, very much discussed.
Do we want something for both this career health and what is our? No. Are we just looking at how something, or are we getting that?
And I know that like this hour is not really.
And they would be strict, actually, it's five stories, but that's not a function, that's not graphic, it's not. But it's strict, but they're using it.
Yeah.
You have three teachers there, it doesn't matter the number of teachers. When I say, when I look at my class,
Yes, yeah, that's what I think.
We also want
yeah.
Yeah, but I think we do need to put in that career.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, no.
I thought so, you guys stayed out of that.
I'm here on this business.
I understand that.
And the ones with person.
Okay, I thought you were doing
Take, whatever program you're in.
Traffic got
And
involved
then,
today.
commerce, physics, with.
So you were the career take versus you were that.
You know, like right before
Well, I
you,
was
so like,
the one
I was
that's
talking about this next summer, right?
Student organization.
Student organization, yeah.
I'm not sure if they ever make this career take, because there was. There's also no, there's elementary school that was a career take ed.
No, Julie, I really actually,
Student.
there's only a couple of.
This is the high school.
When I said
My wife.
this is when they leave, if you let us, if you originally did that,
And she
it'll
was
be
doctor, but she never had a
and the person next to me was sitting next to me. I was thinking of this, actually, done.
Yeah, well, that's, you give that, because that her, she didn't want to.
And we had one thing that I got.
But they had one on each of the,
I didn't know what it was, so we had a master's.
I think every area.
I have a master's in math.
There was supposed to be
So it's all,
well, actually,
all professors were there in one person.
But you're the student, you're student.
no, I'm not.
Oh, you're not that.
Yeah. There's something supposed to be common, but it's.
Yeah.
I saw that.
I don't know,
I saw that. Name.
you know, what's the, so
Who was it?
if you look at that, so right now, in our
I think I
district,
think a lot.
you know, it's not for, you know, kids that have, you know, special needs, things like that. We're not gonna over-categorize or anything like that, but with some exceptions, almost every kid takes out for two. And for the, you know, the ones that are ambitious and college and, you know, they're in for two no later than their sophomore year. No, and there's some exceptions to that. Right?
Yeah,
So that
you always get
someone
somebody
starts who's not ready and then later they're ready.
And they're ready to fire to go
And
down.
so they're great, you know, so you don't.
Absolutely.
But, you know, but as a group, so my two classes, it's mostly sophomores. But in, you know, as a school, I mean, you have, and my old job, this is what I mostly had,
Right.
you know, when I had the juniors and seniors.
Right.
And so for them, you know,
I figured she was probably in a place.
I think the answer to that is so, I mean, you know, is it these persons, create this person, that may be something that.
And here's what I want you to say, you said that.
So do you like doing
I
that?
agree what most
This is one thing I like about
districts have done. Just to get the basics
Part
right.
time, I remember all this stuff.
I cried so hard.
Yeah,
I
I
tried
heard you,
to
right?
really reinforce that, so this
That's
is
what
new
most
here, this is the word, vocabulary,
And part of that, I
math,
think,
but
is
this is
there's
how
not
they
really
fit
good
together.
My
But
brother.
the other one is teach a good integrated math program that was for your, which is really interesting because in other countries, they don't have one junior, very
Well, and so the question is, because we're not ending points, and yes, we recognize there's a whole spectrum of learning in terms of students. And you're writing a standard for the state. Just when you, by definition, when you write the standard, it's a very
So would you never write a standard for calculus because you know you won't get it?
You have, I think you can have, this is like, I think it would be done so that when you write it, this is, at the end of that, this is a minimum expectation, and then you should write standards for calculus. So, we need the standards for that. It's not, because the GLEs have these 12 grades, which they after. So when you, and so you know, I'm not very routine. I know what you guys want to do, so I'm just going to say yes. Because of some work that they completely after. So, there is nothing to balance because everybody has, basically those music.
Okay, and what about college math, or college algebra, because that's what my son is, it's algebra.
So where you're at, you're not from the same.
Because I.
Oh, you did that.
That's what, their standards that you always are above that, it's probably not. The calculus or we don't have a standard for pre-calculus, right? And there is nothing, and there is no.
Start the year.
Well, it's not really, because part of that is, I think, the reason they're doing calculus is because most.
I don't want to, but.
Not.
Without all.
There's no pre-calculus.
Meaning work and all that stuff.
So, you have to stay. Not designated as specific course, because at that time, that wasn't. So if we're gonna look at writing these sort of as the update of the GLEs, you're talking about potentially your grammar changes. Yes. No matter what you do, you're talking about.
No, yeah.
Oh, that's a question I think we need to come back to, you know.
I did. I did. I'm right now. I'm just kidding.
Because there's no state statute that says they have to take something using that, but it doesn't dictate what course they have to take.
Right, so it depends on the district, and how they choose to do it, you know, my district, we, course, that would take it, or going to, I don't know.
So even your career problem. Because the state doesn't dictate that, say this board. Karen has yes. That's why I tried. I was thinking that the process. And I think that's what we get too much for the kids. We need them to think. We need them to look at. And I know that the standards.
I don't think it's here.
It's about 3:15, 3:15 minutes. I stayed here last night, yes. There was no way I'm driving back tonight. I go from, well, I'm out from Avon, so I go up through Mount Grove, then to 60, Kabul, and Kabul, and 63, all the way to here.
So it's a little, it's a little less.
63 and 60 intersect.
Oh, yeah, by the river, right? Goes to Columbia?
No, Kabul is way down
So,
south.
that means it's down 63.
Oh, I have no idea where it goes. This is the first I've ever been to 63.
I'd rather.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I do that pass there every time.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Yep. It's licking, then Houston, then Kabul, then you go west over the mountain road, and then you go south and down in that area, south of I'm from too.
We go to, every year, beginning of the year, it's also faculty. Either after you say,
We used to have a look at some things that,
oh, yeah, we still have one for different high school. This is that.
Does Mr. Easton know?
I assume he does. I mean, it's one of the
Because
they may go, there's several of them, they may be scallops around. And then we have our,
but then there's the Olympics, we used to have science and all these other subjects.
Oh, yeah.
Or you canceled those last year. I had a really good chemistry student.
Yeah. You didn't do all kinds of things. Private school, we know how schemes for private school money. Often they do
Sorts of,
and they get stopped.
It's the duly report.
What we're going to do is we're going to compare the results. Excuse me. Excuse me. Let's, we have a second group that has joined us. They actually included the chairperson. And,
Hi, I'm Lori Reynolds, and I have the extreme honor of being the chairperson for our elementary math group next door. We just wanted to kind of fill you in as to what the work we've done yesterday and where we are at this point. Yesterday in the afternoon, we took grade 5 domain 1, operations and algebraic thinking, and started going through the standards within that domain. Discovered that there are a lot of wording issues, some complication, and how can we simplify that to make it more user-friendly. There are lots of standards that we wanted to go back and revisit this morning. So last night, we were tasked to look at different documents, the Massachusetts 2000 standards, the California standards. So our goal this morning was to, or all we've gotten finished this morning, I guess, is talk about California standards. There were a lot of things that many group members liked, the simplification about it. There was some discussion about how we may need to move some of those standards either up a grade level or down a grade level. So I think that's probably where we're at now. I guess at one point we had discussed meeting with you guys to kind of see more of that transition from our 5th grade into 6th grade and making sure that we were on, that was going to be a smooth transition. Not necessarily that our standards that we're working with are going to be similar or the same, but that they're ready for 6th grade. And I'm sure you guys would appreciate that as well. Anything else from my group that you missed? That you'd like to add to?
I was just saying, I think it would be, putting it mildly, if we said that we were getting along well. I think it's fair to recognize that there are some considerable disagreements, and we're trying our best to hammer those out.
And I think you did an excellent job presenting what you wanted.
Our big discussion, big area of discourse is whether or not the Common Core are copyrighted, and if we have the ability to go in and tweak it to make it our own, using different resources. We have definite breakdown of people saying that we cannot do that, and the other side says, yes, we have the ability to do that and tweak those and for using different resources.
are you getting the legal opinion on that, or how? I mean, it's an important point. We sort of put that to one side a bit by saying, okay, let's look at these different ones, pick out what we think is going to be best.
When you looked at different things, what were those different things? You said you looked at different things.
Well, we have 4 that we
Of those 4 items.
4 that we mentioned yesterday. We haven't done any other ones than that.
So your goal is to pick one of those 4?
No. We're working with them, sort of, for now, and saying, okay, extracting what we think would be.
And one of
what
those
we
is the
want.
Common Core standard that's So one of those resources is the Common Core.
One of those is this Common Core, yes.
Yes, I would just, to address the question about the legal issue, House Legal Counsel is looking at the copyright issue and is preparing some sort of a presentation or information.
I think all we're pushing. Another resource that we came across was the curriculum focal points from NCTM. That goes to K-8 right now, so, but that would put that blend between 5th and 6th grade, as to, what we want them to be done with by 5th grade, be ready as going into 6th grade. So I think that's a good resource to use to kind of blend those grade levels and get them going.
Nancy, was that one of the ones that you mentioned
Yes.
yesterday?
It's in the Dropbox.
That's great. Is it also emailed?
Yes, some of our people don't use Dropbox.
Well, we haven't, I'm Lisa, everybody, we haven't, talked about a chairman or anything like that in our group. We have, been talking a lot about what, sources of information we were going to use. And very much like your group, our concern, is over the span 6 to 12. And that's why yesterday, at the end of the day, we agreed to view the 2 documents that we were looking at last night, were the Curriculum Alignment Initiative document here in Missouri, and also the Common Core math part. And that's what we agreed to do as of left yesterday. And looking at, some people need a general view right now. I presented, I shared with the group something that, a particular concept that I saw, that I was interpreting as very different between the documents. And we all kind of shared our perspective on that, on other ideas. We talked a lot about how to share information between the group, and Nancy is proficient in Dropbox, and I don't have a clue about it, but she's going to teach me. And everybody in the group has an opportunity to learn, because we have like 4 people here that use Dropbox well, and she has placed a number of documents in there already for us to consider and learn from. And that is, anybody else have anything to add?
I would say real quick that we've been using Google Drive, and I don't know if there's benefits in either one or the other. Everybody knows. Strong preferences. But
They both pretty much do the same thing. Google Drive is familiar if you're using Google Docs, as opposed to Word or things like that. But you can come on board your desktop, but it's still cost storage.
It's kind of like for me, an extra step Google Docs is, and it's more for if I want to alter a lot, if you're sending me into the back view and, converse in more than just Dropbox, just the final part.
Yeah, it's things that Dropbox is like a object, it's that storage of the information.
I'm not going to say this, and I don't know the answer, I'm not professing to know the answer, but I know there's a lot of discussion about whether we can use the Common Core state standards, whether we can, et cetera. But as I look at both Massachusetts, that was good, man. Massachusetts, 2011, which, they did away with the 2000 ones in favor of 2011, that have the Common Core in them, plus what they added as standards. So they have done that. California, to me, I haven't read every one of them, but they've done the same thing. So the documents that we're suggesting we look at, those states have done exactly what we're questioning whether we do or not.
Are you guys looking at the current ones?
No, we're looking at the 2000.
They're both in the Dropbox.
so the point that I made in our group is that the fact that states adopted them, the Common Core, I think is not a testament to the quality of the standards. Now, it could be, the standards could be better, but we cannot downplay the role of federal involvement in the standards process. So simply saying that they did do it doesn't make the Common Core good or bad. And so that's why I think it's important to look at multiple sources and to look what they had beforehand.
And all I'm saying, change their standards and sign on to it, get the waiver from the child left behind and the stimulus money.
All I'm saying is, we're questioning whether we have the ability
Oh,
to do
sure,
that.
okay.
And so if the documents are actually looking at those states that were saying, let's look to them, they've done it, then to me, that's some evidence that we have the ability to do that.
Well, why such a
That's
standard
all.
possibly in the future for them not having control over their standards? Why not give your state that sovereignty to have full rights to go in and change anything they want with their standards?
Right, we do, but I really like what you have to say in the fact that we're not saying, that because they were done that way, doesn't necessarily mean they're good or bad. And I think some of us on both sides have formed a judgment that they're bad because it was done this way, or they're good because it was done this way. And I think we really have to look at information as people, because there is nobody, we have our disagreements in this room, but there's nobody here that doesn't care about kids and doesn't want to absolutely do the best for kids. And that's what we're here about doing. And I really like what you said, that we should not make judgments one way or the other because of federal government, because I think we've discussed here, I'm not sure anybody really likes necessarily the process that was done, okay, but let's look at the standards and forget about the way that it was done. And let's look at what's there and see if it's good.
Can we also discuss, House Bill 1490 was signed by, okay, it's a statute now because it was signed by our governor. And doesn't it state Missouri will not be doing Common Core standards? Am I misunderstanding that House bill? Is that what it says basically?
I think it says you can't use you can't use copyrighted materials, and that's why we're trying to find an issue.
Do you think the House bill says that? I understood the House bill, the purpose of it was to stop Common Core in Missouri. That's what I understood.
The House bill is different than the original Senate bill. The Senate bill prohibited the use of Common Core. It was much stronger language than the House bill. Then they come together and they do this thing called truly agreed.
Right.
And truly agreed is 1490, and 1490 does not prohibit it. It prohibits the State Board of Education and Department of Elementary and Secondary Education are prohibited from mandating the curriculum textbook or other instructional materials. Local school boards are still responsible, school programs, etc., and they are prohibited from requiring local school districts to use any appendix to the Common Core state standards. And quite honestly, the discussion that I heard around the appendix was for the English language arts, because some people were offended by that. I don't even think that the legislators were aware there was an appendix to the math standards. In fact, some people in our group weren't, and they pretty well help you guide what goes into what.
So is it your understanding that we're here to write?
That's right, that's
Or not,
I can't hear you.
is it your understanding that we're here because of the House bill and because of this, what we call the statute, to write standards for our state?
To derive standards for us, to set the standards for our states. That's what our job is. And that's why we want to look at the different documents available to us that we specifically want to consider in order to have the best standards possible. And that's what our objective is.
And we're taking that back to the legislature to approve.
That's what our mission is.
Well, and I think kind of what you're saying.
That's what we're here for, right?
I don't agree with that.
We're here to set standards.
We're not here to take back to the chance to take it back to the legislature.
No, it goes to the state.
The state.
Whatever, wherever we can.
I'm just saying that this is serious.
And I think we also, when you talk about the bill and the legislation, I think there are different interpretations of that, just like there are different interpretations of the standards. And so when we say things are clearly written, I would not say that the bill was clearly written, just as I would say the standards are not clearly written. I think they're both issues. So I think there's always going to be some ambiguity, but the biggest piece of our issue when we were looking at the Common Core document is they did make a statement about copyrighted material, and I know you guys were talking about checking on the legalities of that, and that's something that does need to be done because that is in the law, so we do need to look at that.
And also another question is, when Missouri bought the licensure for Common Core state standards, did we not sign on to obey and do what they tell us to do? Does anybody know what they tell us to do? The Common Core.
I have some copies of it, I don't have enough for everyone, sorry.
Right.
And it says,
When you agree to.
license grant, the NGA Center for Best Practices, NGA Center, and the Council of Chief State School Offices hereby grant a limited, non-exclusive, royalty-free license to copy, publish, distribute, and display the Common Core state standards for purposes that support the Common Core state standards initiative. These may involve the Common Core state standards as a whole or selected excerpts or portions.
Exactly, which means you can copy and share with your teachers, you can copy and share with parents, but it doesn't mean you can go in and change the standards themselves because it's copyrighted.
That's what
I guess I have a question about what it means to change them. I mean, so if we change to completely new standards, well, then we change the standards. So
That means we write our own.
the question really, it sounds to me, is can you even read them and use them to inform our standard setting process?
Yes, you
Yes,
can, but you have to copy and paste, no change.
No,
You can use it as background information, that means you have to know where you're coming from.
You can't write them, if it's a copyright issue, you can't write them
You
verbatim.
gotta come from somewhere.
Well,
Yeah, you know, that's the thing on that, you can, but you have to just copy it, yeah, you get the copyright. But you can take the same idea that Common Core got and word it in Missouri language, yes. And you've got the standard, yes.
But you can't take the standard and copy and paste it and then say, I don't like that word, take that word out.
We can't change the copyright, that's exactly what happened.
So now you see the discussion that we're having.
Anyway, I just want to make sure that we got a chance to meet and to,
Well, I was going to say in that regard, I mean, we do need to get that legal opinion, because I hear people, I don't know if I'm the only lawyer in the room, I don't practice and haven't for a while, but the reality is that you ask somebody, can you do this, can you do that? Well, ask me if you can drive 110 miles an hour down the freeway, and I'm going to say, well, yeah, I saw a guy doing that this morning, and I didn't see him getting pulled over, and of course I didn't try to catch up with him, so I don't know. But the point being, you can do this, there's not going to, and what I'm seeing is people say, yes, it's copyrighted, but we can go ahead and change it. Maybe you can drive 100 miles an hour down the freeway too. I'm not going to try it on the way home. But the point is, what you can do, and whether something is actually legal are not the same question.
That's why.
In the same way that the Massachusetts, the California, the GLEs.
Those are all
copyrighted.
They're
all public domain.
I think, so why would we even want to open ourselves up to that legal question when we have things where we're not putting ourselves at risk, okay? Legalese, you're the lawyer. Sometimes lawyers don't even know that's why things go to court. So why would we even want to subject ourselves to that when we have things we can use, or we can totally throw that question out the window?
okay. The reason that some of our group members, why we are using that is because that is what the state is currently using. And so that it's a reference point. We're not saying we're copying anything from any one of these documents. Hopefully it will be, as the gentleman said, Missouri language that we end up with because we are from Missouri. But we're not copying and pasting anything. We are using these as points of reference for our discussions. Our job is to come up with what we as a group, or as a consensus of a group, determine to be the standards for each of the grades. That's what's supposed to be.
Can I ask a question of the other group? You're talking like possibly changing sequencing and moving things from one grade to another. Are you limiting that look only K to 5? Might you pull something from 6 or push something from 5?
Not that far.
Okay.
Well,
We'll let you know.
back to what James was saying earlier, and I'm kind of curious, is there only one microphone in the room
What do you mean?
for the video? And I'm watching Jay is struggling keeping up with the side comments. He's trying though. Thank you.
Well, we've got two people, so we've got.
Okay, great.
But, I think a point that James brought up was that, and we've all brought up the same idea in both work groups, it seems, is that maybe some of the things in the Common Core document, the standards document, were not very well defined. And as such, in Missouri, educators doing their best to try to improve our system in Missouri, they have relied on that document as their source point for professional development and the work that teachers do in their classroom. And so we've tried to, in our group, think in broader terms about the information that we're gathering. And because as far as I can tell, it is not possible to copyright a concept. Mathematics has been around for a very long time. And the problems with the interpretations that we're having with implementation of that particular document and what students and parents are experiencing at home, is something that of course would be considered throughout the whole process of what we intend to do in our groups to improve our education.
So why don't we start over with something totally different? I know everybody keeps going back to what teachers have prepared for Common Core. I'm going to tell you, my professional development training consisted of going over things that STAR teachers used in their classroom for the last 25, 30 years. It's not unique to Common Core. So in this year, when we're not going to have gas back held over our head, why don't we take this opportunity to wipe the slate clean, pick something that's easy for teachers to use, that has high standards, and start from there?
I think for some of us, it means it's the level of professional development you have. And so the Missouri Council of Teachers of Mathematics has taken a proactive approach. And we have dug into those standards, and we've done it by grade band simply because we don't have enough participants to do it just kindergarten, just first grade, just second grade, just et cetera. But we've done that for the past 3 years, and that is a big, big difference between our state and other states. And we hear talk about states that have rejected or are backing away from it. It's not about the content of the standards. It's about the implementation and lack of professional development. That's what it's about in New York. That's what it was about in Indiana. Those are the things that it was about. It was not about the content. And so what I'm looking for is for us to look at the actual content and what is good for kids, and whether we, the reason that we would start that way, by the way, as a board member, we've invested a lot of time. We've invested a lot of precious money, and we are there, and it takes time to implement things. So if we completely scrap it and we switch where different things are again, as that is implemented, once again, kids are going to miss concepts because they're, if it was in 6th grade, if it was in 8th grade, we switch it to 6th grade. By the time the 6th grader now gets to 8th grade, they're going to miss it both years. Those are huge considerations when you make major shifts in curriculum.
And what you're saying is you want to keep them just as is.
No.
The problem is, what I was going to say real quick is that, when we word phrases like wipe the slate clean, that people may be offended by that phrase because they have been working diligently to do their jobs the best that they can do and with the information that they have available. And,
and if you have problems with standards, let's talk about those problems. We can't even get to talking about the problems because we can't agree to what we talk about. I mean, if there's something we don't like about it, let's look at it and redo it.
I think about the only thing that our group has been able to come to an agreement on is that the standards right now are not worded very well, and they may be at the inappropriate level. That's about the only thing that we can come up with right now as a group to agree. So
So that's where we were going to start them this morning, and we couldn't even get returned to the work that we had done yesterday.
Can we change the word?
So we wasted another half a day.
I believe if you look at the other states that have Common Core, such as New York, they receive race to the top money, and they cannot change their standards. They cannot change their Common Core standards. They'll lose their race to the top. And that's why those states are not changing them. California may have added to 15%, and they're making do with it. But those states that tie into the race to the top money, they're stuck with it. Missouri didn't get the money. We didn't make our choice in time, and we missed out on the money, which is a blessing in Missouri. Because now we have the opportunity to say, we can look at the Common Core standards, we can use them as a reference, but we cannot take the Common Core standards and change them because they're copyrighted. If we do, we're going to get sued.
Right, and so, notwithstanding the fact that Apple managed patent the rectangle, and I don't know if people do that or not, but, so it may be coming down the pipe, even though now concepts haven't been tried yet, but, you never know. So, but what we can do is we can start looking at things, and I know we've got some people who like some things that are in the whatever, and I know like Nancy here, I mean, she's got some things that she likes and she thinks are work well for kids and are successful, and so I think we can put those things in there. I know that nobody wants to just start and do, literally everything from brand new, but I think if we did, we could find some healing with our group. I think we could go through and people could say, I like this. And if they want to refer to the Common Core and say, this is something I like, the rest of us could say, maybe, that specific thing would be something that's okay that we can put in, and maybe we need to clean up the language a little bit, and that could work, and that might be a path forward. I think if we're just gonna, take the organizational structure of what's in place, we're not gonna end up with the best thing for kids, and that's my concern.
Julie, as I hear it, it sounds to me like we're starting with a blank slate, but we have in front of us, as we mentioned, a span of documents that we're looking at. So we've got a blank in front of us, and we're saying, okay, what from these things are we going to pull and then put here? If you like something from Massachusetts or California or Common Core, the discussion then is whether or not in that span of things we can even have Common Core. And I would suggest that we can. That we can have that in the span of things that we're looking at and pull as we create our document. Doesn't mean we're pulling necessarily exactly from anywhere, but that we can look at these span of documents and then go through and create our standards.
That's our group has arrived at that decision.
But we can't just sit down and rewrite the Common Core.
And I don't want it.
That's where we need, and I know, and I think everybody's bringing outside what Indiana did, and people were trying to do. If you go back and you look at the Common Core document, whether you like it or not, those are the things that we were teaching before the Common Core. Right. Okay, they're at a different place, maybe a different grade level, and they've been organized maybe in a different manner. But I haven't seen anything in that document yet that we weren't teaching before.
Exactly. Math is math.
No, well, it is. Show it in different ways. Can I finish, please? Yes. Okay, but they just organize it differently. So can we look at, I just say that we can't look at it, to me is not something I think that we should say. I think that we can look at it, take the good things that are there, and there are some organizational structures that are there that are good. Are there some structures there that they don't like? Of course. Can't we rewrite it? Can we take those ideas? I think what I think about is take a look at them locally. If sixth grade is that what we want sixth grade to be like, or fifth grade or whatever grade, how is that, if the kids did this, what these are the types of things kids would want to do, if we want to rewrite them, yes, or if we want to look at Massachusetts, or we want to look at California, these are the big pictures ideas that we can agree upon or not agree upon for sixth grade, or for fifth grade, or for fourth grade. So if those global ideas are the things that we think are good, then let's look at this document, see if it's good, and if it's not, Julie, like what you said, let's look at another document, let's go someplace else, let's find those components that we can agree upon.
And I think we might be a little bit, just trying to come up with structure. And I think if we're all trying to wrap our heads around what a good structure could be, I think that's, and I know there's different learning styles, but, I have to sort of, play with something for a while before it starts making sense of itself to me. But I don't think that, any of us are really saying that you can't look at, any ideas that are there. But, I think if that's the focus, then that's going to be hurtful to too many people, and I think that's not going to feel right. So I look at it, and I just want to put this out there too, because every time Kathy says something, I think, oh, right, I have that, and I need to bring this up. But the Missouri Learning Standards, or learning goals, that was their called, that were, immediately preceding Common Core. They were never actually adopted, but they were pending for at least 2 years, and a lot of districts, including my own, worked really hard to modify the curriculum, and I found it to be, very good. And so I want to put that out there as a document that, that people can look at. And, and they put their, they had core concepts, core contents for each, level, and went through and had these general categories.
Didn't you say that yesterday?
Yeah, they were there, but the governor tabled and signed on instead to get the race to the top.
The waiver
was very important.
They were there, and I was at the meeting where the state board turned it down. Okay, it wasn't because the governor didn't sign on to it. It was because the State Board of Education turned it down. I was at that meeting.
And why was it?
For Common Core. No, it was not for Common Core. Common Core was not even out at that point.
That's true, they weren't even written.
They were not written at that point. Because the State Board of Education turned those standards down, so they could not move forward.
There was some pushback from Missouri teachers, and I don't know exactly.
Well, I'm not going to name names, but I know specific groups that were targeted to stop the procedure. And so, yes, I know that there were people that liked them, people that didn't like them, just as there are people that like the Common Core, people that don't like the Common Core, but there was a very targeted group that targeted those not to go forward.
Keep moving forward.
Stephanie, I'm just trying. What purpose are the rest of us all together in here for? I mean, it sounds like we're having some arguments, we might as well argue in a smaller group. But if we're here that they, if we're here to get started, by George, let's get started.
I think we want to come together to kind of give a general overview and somewhat agreement on what kind of documents we need to try to work around. And at least that's the motion that we made over there, so that we can have some common ground here between the two parties.
Right.
And I think we covered it.
Yeah, I think so.
I thought we were going to talk about the scheduling again. I don't know that, the schedule was set where the groups were formed, and I still feel like that's, pretty unfair overall. And
In the elementary school already, we voted about this time. They voted yesterday.
We voted in our meeting next week, but we didn't decide on it.
Yeah, not next week, and we're starting to do it. So October 2nd.
And we modified the schedule. Thursday we said noon to 5 or 6.
We can be in the room till 5:30 we need to start.
And then Friday we said what?
8:30.
Yeah, but I'd really rather not, I'd rather wait until the second one, or do it on weekends, because I mean, this is really killing me.
But it's not just you that is killing, it's all of us, because we all had to rearrange our schedule, so,
Well, I mean,
I understand.
The dates in the future are in the future,
But I think
they're not now.
But they've already decided that they're going to come the second or the third. Okay, and is it hard for me to do that? Yes. Can I be there? Yes. I was thinking there. So, and I understand, but if we want to meet together, because I think that's one of the things we talked about, they've already made that decision, but maybe we can make before we leave today, if we're going to come back on the 22nd or 23rd, when it's later in October, if that's appropriate. So And I know what you're saying, Brenda, that that's a short-term rental.
I think it can be revisited in our group. This is a discussion we can have later in our group. But I think it can be revisited only because now that all the other documents have come out and how we want to structure maybe the layout of the standards, I'm gonna need more time than a week, and I know everybody else is too. So I just think it needs to be looked at in our group too before we make any final decision.
Or if we put in place one of those things where a scheduling document where you go on and you click the dates that you're available. Have you seen those things?
Yeah, I made a suggestion yesterday that our group, and we didn't vote on anything, we were discussing it. I made a suggestion that our group maybe not use the third and fourth days that had been scheduled, but because of the short time frame between, and that we would need more time to consider the documents. And, but at the same time that we keep the 5th and 6th meeting days because people have.
Those days are the 20th and 21st.
I'm talking about the number of days.
Yeah,
But the reason that I suggested that was because I wanted to take into consideration that people have been working on coordinating this work group effort, and it is a lot of scheduling to do.
So our group has made a decision that at least 9 of us have to be here to hold a meeting. So what happens if no more meetings can convene? Does anybody know what?
And you make the decision that you can only meet.
No, we have made a decision that if 9 of us cannot be present or are not present, we will not meet. So my question is if 9 of us can't meet or nothing ever gets resolved, either one, what happens from there? Does anybody know?
I think we'll go back to the police. I think our state will go
I
back.
think that's what and you have a task with this process, you have to do this. You've got to make it work. I think that's what
What I remember him saying yesterday when he came in, because he brought that point up, was if we can't come to an agreement and get the work done that we've been tasked to do, that Jesse will do what they want to do anyway, and that will mean stay with the
Common Core? Okay, that's what I thought I understood, but I wanted to make sure.
Look, Missouri Attorney Standards.
Which is
Whenever each group decides if you're going to meet or not meet, you need to let someone know, perhaps your facilitator or at Jesse's level, because these are public meetings. And so if you're not going to meet on that day or that time, it has to be posted. So it can't be just like a quick, let's meet at 10 or 6.
I hope that we will decide before the end of the day.
With respect to public meetings, because we talked about Skype meetings or conference calls or something, how would we do that? By videotaping, recording. I mean, I'm all in favor of Skype and conference calls, but I'm a little concerned about.
I think the way it actually works is that the information is public. They have access to the information. They don't actually have to be present at the meeting.
So the meeting is public.
Access to the information.
They have to have the opportunity to hear it as it transpires. And it is being recorded for individuals.
So it's not a public meeting, it's a meeting in the public, is what it is. There's a difference. There's a difference between the meeting.
There are appointees that have conversations, and then there are observers, that can sit around with them.
And listen. That's a meeting in the public.
I think Jay has something to say.
It qualifies under the Sunshine Law. And so because of the Sunshine Law, it's important that the notion of being available to the public is held, that there's at least a 24-hour posting before a meeting has to be held so that it is public and the public is made aware. And if you choose to do a conference call, or if you choose to do Skype and any type of virtual meeting, you have to also account for the public to be available to witness and listen in to the conference call and the virtual meeting as well.
Right, which means we just have to give them
It's not a matter, no sir, it's not a matter of posting afterwards. It has to be.
No, we would have to give them access to the actual conference call.
That's correct.
Okay.
whatever number is good.
Yeah.
And can I just add, if we choose different dates, we can choose dates, but finding a place to meet may not be too easy to do. So we have to keep that in consideration, that we're going to continue to meet here in Tip City, wherever that might be, because there's a lot of arrangements to be able to get meeting rooms that would accommodate both teams together and even possibly meeting space. So just saying we're all available on these dates, great, but we may not have any place to meet. So.
Right, I think that's a good point, that you make there. Because there's no way on earth that we're gonna get this through in 6 meetings, okay? So six days. Well, I know how many we're running. So, but we have to be cognizant of that, and we need to learn what type of advanced posting notice do we need, both for to meet the public requirement as well as to do the actual scheduling. Does our facilitator or do you know what those requirements are?
We're passing around the sunshine law and the requirements for that.
Okay. Yes, okay. But that doesn't, in terms of actually setting something up, how much advance notice do you have?
I don't have access to.
I think we're also going to do like an estimate of how many days this is going to take, because I know that my school district is paying for me to be here, and I'm not so sure they're committed to paying for me to be here for more than 6 days, so that would be something we.
I do it without paying. And they're covering for me, so.
Well, I'm not gonna lose my job to be on this committee. I mean, I'm really passionate about it, but I'm really passionate about buying groceries too, so.
Under the sunshine law, do we also have the authority to declare an executive session? Which would therefore not have to have the public access to that? I'm just throwing it out there to try to.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you for it. Sir, before we leave today, are we going to have to discuss about meetings? Yes.
And by the way, I forget one more thing. Those are the initial documents we're starting with in our Dropbox, but we're able to add at any time. So it's nice.
Yes, sir.
Yay.
See you guys later.
We need a reality check. Yes. I mean, we're on a day and a half, and we haven't done any work. And I don't know how anyone else feels, but I'm not so much committed to spending the rest of today, let alone another 4+ days doing this same kind of discourse and dialogue.
Which is why we should have briefed us yesterday and waited until we have the full group.
I think not only a full group,
The next
time.
I think we were on a track yesterday, I think, when we started talking about kind of what Fred said, we were starting to look at some documents. Yeah, to start, and then we seem to get off track. And that's one of the things that I would recommend that we do, is that before we leave today, is that we make an agenda for our next steps of what we all can agree upon to the next time, whenever we meet, that we're going to do, and we're going to try our best to stick to that agenda, because when we don't have an agenda, kind of like here, we're jumping all over the place.
Well, then, I make a motion that we make the agenda for what we're going to do next, and when we meet, and then we maybe Saturday.
Well, I would, just before we do that, we did agree yesterday before we left to look at the 2 documents. I know everybody had maybe not enough time to process that information, but if anybody has things to share, I think we could do that before we start, because that was what we did last, so we should follow up with that thing, I think, that we agreed upon.
Well, and if your motion to make an agenda for the rest of the day, I second that motion.
No, for the next time we meet.
For the next time we meet, okay.
And be done today.
And being finished now, that we have to meet with them about the next time we meet. So
We're not gonna be able to come up with days that we're all gonna be able to meet.
No,
Let alone a whole other group of people.
That we need to meet with them every time. We need to have an initial meeting to coordinate what we're doing, and then something.
Once we know what we're doing, yes, we need to, once we have, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Once we kind of have a scope and sequence in mind for our 6 through 12, absolutely, we need to meet with them and make sure that we can blend the actual things. I think at this point, it's gonna be the waste to meet with them and then just spend more time.
So can we, so you're going to make an agenda for the next time, that we do that before we leave, and then we break and we leave, and then come back for whatever days before we set up this.
So I'm not seeing our time very personal.
It is.
Can I ask, like, okay, what Lisa started this morning when she had, her question about the one standard that she had found in one document and then that same standard in another document and the differences between the two. Would there be a reason why, if we had already compared those documents, why we couldn't discuss those this afternoon?
Well, I think we need to, let's start with the ones that we had agreed to.
Right, that's what I'm talking about.
This one right here.
She brought both of them up this morning. Those were the ones that we agreed to last night, was to look at both of those documents.
But I think we agreed to look at that document.
This document and then the sixth grade.
Starting
I
with
just had to look at the, she went straight to the end.
Yeah. What she needs. Yeah. So
You need conceptual.
Well, to looking at this versus the end point on the
Right.
board, versus going to 6th grade.
So coming back to your point, you made a motion about, about creating, I just want to make sure, creating an agenda. Before discussion? Okay, I'll second that. Then we can discuss. Okay, so.
This does not include, this is just creating a shit, it's not a journal, right?
No, it was both.
Was it both?
What what I was able to capture was the motion that the group makes an agenda before they meet another day.
No, she said, and then adjourn for the day.
And adjourn.
Oh, and then adjourn?
Oh,
Are you feeling like your time is not being very well spent here?
Absolutely.
Okay, and I understand, I mean, yeah, I understand, I think, yeah, I understand that. And you're a principal, right?
Assistant principal.
Okay. And so there may be times when we're discussing things that you may not feel that you're needed. And so I think that's important that you brought up the fact that we talked about voting on things would require 9 presidents, but maybe at a time, if we're talking content of math, that, you know, you may not feel like you need to be there. I've walked out several times just to take a breath, and I'm afraid I will miss things that people say.
I understand that. I did teach math for 2 years, but I do understand that there will be times when the math content likely goes deeper than what I may be able to contribute to. So I do understand that. But that's not why I feel like my time hasn't been valuable today. And I don't think I haven't heard very much math content discussed at all.
I agree, but I'm opposed to journals because I've already wasted this day.
Right.
And I
So you're
can't,
gonna waste the rest of your day if you continue like we are.
I know.
Because I wasted yesterday and now another half of the day.
I hear you, so I think the solution is not to journal, it's to get to do what we're doing.
Well, if you can get that to happen, I'm right behind you.
Yes, you will leave your motion as is, or is there some discussion on motion?
I'm losing my confidence in the group. I don't think we can get on task. I think we can.
Well, and I disagree. I think we can get on task, and I think part of it is you have to know what everybody is feeling, and so I appreciate Deborah sharing that. But so this motion is that we create an agenda, and then after that we talk about what that agenda should be. So I have a couple ideas about that.
She was creating an agenda for the next time we meet and adjourn. And is that still what you want to go?
Okay, I will amend my motion.
Right.
That we create an agenda for after lunch We create an agenda, we break for lunch, we come back from lunch, and we do it.
And then, okay, so that's what you're going to motion to, that we're going to create an agenda for when we come back after lunch. We'll do that and then follow whatever our agenda is. And do it, do I need this clarification? No, because I think it was just the, okay.
Friendly clarification. Your amendment now does not include creating an agenda for the next time we meet. Is that right?
That's for after lunch. For after lunch.
I understand that, but it does not include for the next time we meet. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Maybe. Okay. Any other discussion on that?
Is there stuff in there? It's just an amendment. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, all in favor, raise the hand. Abstentions. Okay.
See, you brought us together.
Yes, you did. Now we all see them work out.
So I guess what we need to do is talk about the agenda, and what are those, if we go to lunch, whatever, because we can go any time, and let's say we go in 30 minutes.
My recommendation is we put some time limits on the agenda.
I totally agree, because meetings where I've been at, and we don't put a time limit on it, it can rant and it can go off the other topics. We might also want to think about, and this is just a thought about, some roles and responsibilities of people, about somebody keeping us on, like a timekeeper, say we have 5 minutes, we have 30 minutes allotted for this, do we need more time for somebody to do that? So do we need some roles and responsibilities when the agenda is done so that we don't get off track?
Well, let's do agenda first.
Okay.
It seemed like you had an agenda, we were gonna look at this document.
Yes.
And then we were gonna do 6 grade common core, so that seemed like.
And then there's one other thing, and that is determining the date of the next meeting.
Yeah.
So that was as well. I don't think that should be the last thing we do. But anyway. And also the agenda for the next one. So if we do those 4 things, we will have done a lot.
And yeah, I think so. If we create an agenda, then I think it's something that we all have to do, is we stick to that agenda, and then we're going to get it out to people.
So the sequence I would recommend, just to make sure that we get it done, is this document first, then the date and the agenda for the next meeting, and then we go to 6th grade.
In my personal opinion, I'd rather do the math, look at both of them, look at, because if we need to take, that's me.
Or
That's how I
maybe we can do the date and the agenda for the next meeting before lunch.
I think maybe we do the agenda for the next meeting when we're done, or close to the end of this meeting.
Well, we can do the date.
We can do the day, okay, that's an option, but also remember on the dates, if those dates are the issue, might find it where it stays, if we decide to meet on a date that's not already scheduled, and that's going to be an issue.
Okay, we're going to the agenda. Number 1 is look at higher ed.
I think number 1 is the date.
Is what?
Well, this is something we can do before lunch. We can look at,
Well, we said we were going to set the agenda for this afternoon, and that was our ask before we went to lunch. So we're trying to set the agenda for after lunch.
okay.
So the after lunch agenda, what I heard you say, unless we've changed, is that we're going to look at the higher ed document.
Yes.
Higher ed document, number 1.
And
Common Core 6th grade, number 2, is the starting point of where kids are coming to us.
If you want to put a timeline on this one, you guys had mentioned that before, I'm just asking if the time recording it up here.
Maybe we'll see what we get, and then we work backwards, right?
And then number 2 was what? So
Common Core 6th grade, so we can get a starting point for where kids are coming to us. Correct?
Agenda
And
for next.
setting the agenda and date.
Well,
What's on your report?
you want me to put them on the same step?
No.
That's trying to be efficient.
can we have some next steps or that we as responsible people will do before we come back? Because we can have an agenda, but if we don't put down what each one of us individually we agree upon, we believe that we're going to do and have reviewed and are clear about what we're going to do, we'll come back and start on where we are. So to take a few minutes just to do the next steps. Is that all right?
I don't know, let's see how we do on this first one before we confine ourselves too much.
Well,
I think,
She's speaking broadly.
I think she's just suggesting, okay, so for the next meeting, this is what you need to be prepared.
Yes.
And we should be able to tell that when we set the agenda, should we not?
Right, it's after we finish with the afternoon meeting, we set the next steps for what we're going to be responsible to do, and make it clear that this is the document we all want to review, this is the feedback we want to have ready, whatever, and that we can get out, we have to make it clear now so that we send it to the people that are not here, they'll know what their task is going to be, otherwise we can start all over again. And we want to make sure that we're all on the same page about what we want to get done individually before we come back.
That would be pretty clear from how the agenda is set, just like we did a lot of June there.
Yeah,
And so I believe our last thing, after we do that, is to name our liaison, or
Chairperson liaison.
chairperson to the reporter dude.
Exactly.
What?
Two. So do I need to add something here about next steps or no?
That should be enough.
We said we were going to do that today. We
Yeah.
don't want to do it, okay, but I guess we need to.
So plan for next steps, how do you want to do
What
it?
was your question?
No, what you said was that we need to, make sure that we take care of assigning the person to be a.
Right, for the liaison, but before that, we were talking about whether or not we needed to know or make a list of what we needed to be prepared for the next meeting.
That's part of the, that's part of the agenda.
Okay, that's all I want to know, whether it's right, if there's something else here, just one.
But you can't erase it.
I can't, not a whiteboard.
I do have to write something.
Well, two liaison, two, right?
Yeah.
Oh, now there's still something wrong.
We will look.
L-I-A-S.
L-I-A-S-I-A. F-I-L-A-I. We won't, go ahead.
L-I-A-I-S-O.
Thank you. I'll fix it at lunch.
Well, since we were going to do that, we can't start until after lunch.
Hurry up, meeting. So you know what that means? That means that the people that haven't had time to review the documents, could you review the documents, that's just my 2 cents.
Could we skip ahead and set our dates? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Do that now, just so we have a few minutes. What time is lunch?
I don't think it opens until 11. So,
I mean, since we have just a little time, could we go ahead and?
well, and I think, and I think we could set the time that we're going to come back, because I think Tiffany made a really good point for those that maybe didn't have an opportunity to review last night, that they can take that, you're supposed to know what you have, so that we can take that time and to review and write up if you did not have the opportunity or had trouble getting documents. We know.
So what time do you want to start?
So we're going to remember to break down. We should probably end the
Okay.
Less
So we didn't put time.
Less than.
What's your question?
The end of the day is at 3.
Less than. Less than equal.
Do we want to go back and set time frames, somebody before I mentioned time frames, so that all of it didn't end up in one area. So if you want me to record those up here as reminders for all of this, because I know we're very passionate and I know that sometimes.
So we got
There were several people that needed to leave early today, correct?
I want to.
Yeah, so we have to define our endpoints.
So why don't we have lunch at 11 and we're back at noon, we should have 12 to 1 on the higher ed and 1 to 2 on the 6th grade.
Well, do you need to leave at 2?
I
Well, we can leave at 2 today.
12 to 12:45, 12:45 to 1:30.
1:30 and then 1:30.
No, hold right there, we'll do right now. We can do the next 10 minutes.
Well, we can't set the agenda.
But again, how can you pick a date if you don't know what it's going to happen between now and then?
Well, that's one reason to put the date off a little bit until the.
Well,
second.
possibly, and honestly, I don't know what all documents we're gonna say we have to redo, but,
I make a motion that we set the next meetings and use the dates, the last of the 2 dates that were originally scheduled.
Which was 20 and 21st.
Well, wait, that's not a good draft one.
I thought we were going to time,
So you do that first one from that.
because, I mean, she has a point of, you know, until we see how far, because we may have to readdress these at the next meeting, we don't know, we may need more documents, okay, that's all this afternoon, but we kind of need to break up the time frame so that we are productive.
So if we leave at 3, then we're gonna choose 2 liaisons at 2:55, right?
Well,
Something about maybe.
No, but that's the reason why I think we can use.
How many people are looking here? How many people are looking for this and stuff?
I think it's okay to have a meeting and for people to leave early or to come late or whatever. Our agreement was that we have 9 and we have a meeting.
Right,
And
and
I was wondering how many was meeting.
I think we'll have enough, because I just kind of did a quick.
I think that's
there's
just
no guilt on anyone.
No, and it's not about guilt though, but you have to come back and think, we had very little notice. I'm not an insider. I was very lucky to be chosen at the last minute and, and I moved heaven and earth to get here. I have to leave today at 11:30, so I don't like the idea of, having, important things like the schedule and things being decided when I'm not here. But with that said, that was the whole point of, oh yeah, well, so who cares if people have noticed they're here, we're the only one. I don't think that's the right attitude. So, I'm leaving, I'm going to leave, I'm not changing my plans for this afternoon. People are thinking, oh good, she won't be here. But I have a couple things to say in that respect. I just want to put this out, so I'm not trying to be, defensive about it. But on this, if you want to start, so here was my suggestion too, to try to make people, and this is more for, and in respect to Deborah's comment, but to try to make people feel like, we're getting something done. If you start with, and maybe you'll have to tweak this too, but I look at this document that we apparently agreed to start with, and I think there's definitely consensus as to that. So they've got, category 1, numerical computation, category 2, algebra, category 3, geometry. So there's some big topic missing, and we catch it. Data. So make sure, and so this, I thought, however much I'm not so kept on, college algebra, I think, starting with those and having those be the big areas, I bet you could get everything else to fit under one of those broad categories as you go back, because you're going to have to look at these things and say, when did we do this? Where's the right place for that as you go through? And then if somebody has something from, Common Core or Massachusetts or California or Kathy's Missouri Learning Standards that I'm obviously I'll like them, then that comes in, right there. So, I think that can be a way, and so my point is, I'm not going to be here, but I'm putting this out there that I'm okay with that kind of an approach. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So,
I make another motion that we set our next meeting day before lunch so that everybody is here to consider the date.
I second that.
Okay. You still had a motion out there that was never seconded.
Could you read that motion?
Lisa made some motion that the next meeting be the dates of October 20th and 21st. And that was.
And I'll second that.
I think Robert would get up and meet this room here.
So October 20th.
Whatever.
So we had a motion to set the dates, and now we have a motion that those be the dates. And in the opposite order of the order I just gave them, yes, that I agree with that correction.
So, can I make another motion that we?
Oh, no. No,
It's
all I have is a home. That's all right.
You can withdraw a motion, you can't make a motion after a motion after a motion. Robert is now running.
Well, I tell the group that there's plans right now for a plenary session with everybody on October 3rd, because I know most of the groups planning that. There is discussion of there being a plenary session with all of the work members on October 3rd. So,
And what does that mean, all the groups?
all the groups together to discuss the overall framework and how this is all going to work together, and some general, it should have happened yesterday, it didn't.
So October 3rd was our second meeting.
Yes, second, third, next time.
So what's the idea then, well, how long is this plenary session? I mean, was the idea we would do that at the thing also?
Yeah, kind of as long as people were here, we do that.
And where did you get that information from? Because it seems like you have some information
That's the rest of your time.
Yeah.
I heard that from the speaker's office. So, it's not confirmed, so I'm just letting you know that this is a possibility out there, that you may receive another notice for a meeting on the 3rd.
So I'm just wondering what else is out there that we don't know.
I would rather that, for me personally, I'm comfortable with a session of that sort taking place without my being present. I don't personally feel like that would be a productive use of my time compared to my time with my 150 students in class. So that's just my personal perspective.
My perspective is along the same lines. I mean, my job, as I see it, is to contribute to this group and to do what I can to move these standards forward, move the standards we agreed forward.
And mine is that.
And so, you know, I think, fine, if they want to have a plenary session, then that's fine. But that's irrespective of what we need to do. We need to decide what we can be together to discuss this.
And that's part of my point, is that we made a big point yesterday of saying we run this group, you know, that not outside forces will determine this.
Can we vote on the motion that's been seconded?
If someone wants to second the nature of the motion,
That we meet.
if someone calls a question, I don't know a motion unless discussion's all in it.
I think it was that we're gonna meet October 2nd and 3rd.
No, 20th and 21st.
I will just say that on Tuesdays, when we meet, I will always have to be at 2, but I'm okay with that, as long as I know what happens.
We will vote on it.
Yeah, as long as I know what happens.
That's the last.
We can go there, as long as we have one. You can do it.
I mean, the issue may not come.
Right.
I'm not trying to.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so we're calling the question?
Call the question.
Question. So,
All in favor?
the motion is to meet on the 20th
And
and
the 21st.
21st.
But not the second, third.
No,
That
that's
wasn't part of the motion. That wasn't part of the motion.
Not
That will be our next meeting, that was the motion of next meeting.
Yeah.
I'm talking about our group work here.
Correct. More discussion? Yes.
No, I think the question's been called.
It's happening the 3rd then, but go ahead.
Okay, so that is our motion is that this group will not meet until October 20th.
The 21st.
But they will meet until the 20th,
Right.
unless the 21st falls before the 20th.
And in madness.
All right, all in favor of that motion? Against? And abstain?
Nope.
But our definition of abstain was that they can live with it. Just not.
No, we never.
Oh, it's 2/3.
We said for
Is that
whole.
fair?
That's the consent agenda.
Do we need any more discussion?
Yeah.
So why do we not want to? We want to meet early? I'm okay with that too.
I just am thinking about when I've developed curriculums before, you gotta get on it. You can't just keep delaying things 2 and 3 and 4 weeks because then the time is upon you and we've got a lot of work to do.
The good thing about the second and the third, for me personally, is it's a different day of the week.
Yes.
Thursday and Friday, which just having a different day makes a difference to me in my schedule, so.
Jay has a comment.
Might remind the group that according to the House bill, that the liaison will have to report within the first 30 days on progress, which means if you do meet on the 20th, that means 30 days starting from yesterday. So that means prior to the 22nd, you'll have, the liaisons will have to report within that time frame. So if they call to report before that, and all you have is 2 days, that will be what your report consists of.
I think that's okay, and I don't think that we should feel bad about it, and I get that it's super frustrating, in some ways, and I think all of us have it for different reasons, but, the reality is, this is not an ordinary group where, a sub-branch of the executive branch brings together a group of people that is choosing, this is political, and pretending otherwise, I don't see how that helps. I don't think it was anybody in our group, but when I was in the bathroom earlier, somebody said, I think it was from their group, somebody said, my gosh, just being here takes nerves of steel. And I don't know what that says about my personality, that I'm actually fine. But I think we need to, kind of respect that. And that means we go to ourselves in that way too, that we have to just look at this and say, so maybe this is not moving as, quickly as we would like, or as efficiently as we would like, but it didn't feedback. So we're here, and I think we can move forward.
One thing I would like to bring up real quick, because I'm afraid after we leave today that we won't see Tina again, and I know she has a job, and we all have jobs to do, but I'm just thinking that it might be helpful if Tina were to serve as one of the liaisons, just to be a helper in the work. Does the liaison have to be a work group member? Okay, I didn't know.
I'll make a motion that we go ahead and meet regional next 2 days, second, third. Is that second, third, is that right there?
So, Margaret, is that what it is?
Because I know I can't do the third, which is fine. But I'm just thinking, if we know ahead of time that there won't be 9 of us, is that something we want to ascertain?
Well, and I think that we can find out, and if there's not going to be 9, because we also don't with additional people on the committee, and they're going to come.
5 more people.
Yeah, so I would say for this group, I can be here, I think it will probably have 9, but at least we can talk about it, and those that can't be here.
By the way, if you find out there are 5 other people on council, you can adjust the 9.
Well, I would just like to bring up that if another meeting is planned, and that you mentioned, if another plenary meeting is planned of all the work group members, then those that choose to attend that would not be, they would be attending that rather than having a different focus, the focus on our man that we are all here having in common. So that is another chunk of time, and we all have to make a decision about how to use that. And it's in our decisions. I don't want to offend anybody in my decision, but right now, my decisions are based on all of my students. But thank God, a very capable substitute. And, being here, working on doing the work here.
Hey, I think our decision is without regard to anything, we don't really know that. And we're on us, we do what we're
And the only reason I brought it up is that if it happened and somebody really wanted to go, and didn't want them to feel like, well, if I know we're gonna do that, we can do this schedule.
Exactly, I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, it's good. Information is good.
Yeah.
Keeping it,
And we haven't talked about time, and I'm assuming you don't know what time that is.
No, it's not for sure, I'm just letting you know, it's,
Maybe we
somebody
will.
out there.
Yeah,
I was to call a
question.
question, kind of call a question that means we vote on meeting October 2nd, so
Okay.
call a question. So
All in favor of meeting on the 2nd and the 3rd? Raise your hands. 1, 2, 3. Great. 8 against, 2, and abstentions, 2. 8 to 2. Okay, now let's talk about time. You want to come in a little later? Well, you want to do the 9 o'clock like we did yesterday, so people have time to drive in? You want to start early? You want to start at 10? We're starting at noon.
Right,
Amen.
Yeah.
So Maggie, what are your thoughts on that? What's a good time for you?
I could do 8 or I could do 9. 9 is 16.
9, you don't have to, I don't have to drive in the night before I can drive in the morning. 8, I can still do it, but
I'm still doesn't leave at 4:40.
I could not leave for that Well, and that's just it, and part of this is you might be able to make it on the 2nd or the 3rd, but maybe not both days, and if that's okay. You know, because like you said, this in your classes, and the same thing with everybody here. Hey, I can miss Friday, but not Thursday, as long as we have posted on the reviews.
Yeah, I sort of like the idea that way it was done this time, that it's 9 to 4 and then 8 to 3. Yeah, and I say that because I, you know, I don't necessarily mind the other night. Last night I could not have done that before I had short notice and special things that I mentioned, but, you know, but, I mean, I would drive it in the morning and.
So is it a motion, Julie?
And you missed the rush hour in Columbia, you go with this morning. So, you know, so is that, is 9 to 4 on Thursday and 8 to 3 on Friday?
Is that a motion?
I will move to that.
Yeah. Discussion on those times.
Fred?
I'll think so.
We love you,
Is
Fred.
there a time in here?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we're a very small school, short staff. I mean, I was lucky to get somebody to cover for me at short notice. I don't know, I don't want to presume.
Right, understood.
Understand. Call the question. All those in favor?
Did you answer?
And all opposed? Opposed? And abstain. 10-1-1.
I'm not going to hold it. No one if I can do it.
Can I bring up one more topic, since I'm not going to be here this afternoon, that's to do with the agenda when you start working on this the college entry level competencies and all that. You know, one issue is, you know, the waiver. And so for the no child left behind waivers, you know, one way you can get it is to do Common Core, and that, obviously that's something I'm supposed to be familiar with that. But another way to do it is to have your higher ed people, you know, sort of endorse, maybe endorse is not exactly the right word, but that's what it would be. And so my suggestion was to use this, even though we've got to get the data in there, we know that's super important. But that if this, you know, these categories, numerical computation, algebra, geometry, I mean, those are very straightforward, and, you know, we are resourceful people, and I think that adding that fourth category of data would bring a nice structure to it that would make it, you know, pretty easy to, you know, argue for, you know, the idea that we have made proper standards. Does that make sense?
I think that was actually the purpose that it was listed in the bill, so please use this as part of your discussion.
I think every citizen can use, whether it's Common Core or GLEs, have the same structure. It's not a unique structure in any way.
No, well, I don't want to suggest that I think it is, but, the structure of math is probably, not really, subject to any serious debate. So, in terms of, what you make it look like, substance is important, but appearances are too. And if we don't, come up with something that looks like we did something, then we're risking that people are going to dismiss our work. And if you don't think that's going to happen, try to see if I think.
And I like the way that, the suggestion that you made, because I think it would be helpful, because a lot of the work that has been done in the Department of Education and PD activities over the long period of years, I've been teaching 24 years, but many times those are also structured in that way, with that general breakdown for the math. And I think that that would be a good way to organize the information.
So it's not too new to the
Right.
So, like, maybe it's oversight. On the agenda, I assume this room is already reserved for that day, so we will be meeting in this location, is that correct? I just want to make sure we use that one. Or a different location, because we need
Before we change topics, since she's not going to be here after 11:30, I think that what she's essentially proposing, and I don't know whether we have to make a formal motion on that, is that we have 4 categories as we break out the different standards. Is that what you're proposing?
I don't know that I'm ready to say that at this point. I think that's definitely a thought, and I don't know if we know for sure what those are.
I think
how
those-
those work, those organizing structures.
I think those 4 categories are going to be no matter what.
Right, how to phrase and how to do it.
Yeah, and my suggestion, and I agree with Kathy, I don't think it has to be a formal motion, and I was suggesting that, because I feel like we don't want to, make decisions like that until we're ready. And so, but I was just putting that out there for the thought that, yes, we should, in essence, comply with this document in the sense that these things should be in our secondary curriculum to meet up with post-secondary as reflected by this document, but also that it's important to make it look like that's what we're doing, to make that connection. I mean, we know that that connection is there, but how do you make that super clear to the casual observer? And I think, again, we want to be people of substance, I know that, but I think if you don't pay attention to form, your work is not going to get the audience and treatment that it deserves.
Could I go back to one other thing on the clarification of the waiver? Does anybody know if it's just college and career readiness standards that you need, or something more specifically?
And when you say the higher ed side law firm, who are you talking about?
Right, so the way that it's being done, I guess, and this was the issue that came up with, for Oklahoma, who, which got rid of the common core, we, just to try to get right down to it, if they can get, some kind of representative body, like for us in Missouri, I think it would be, the Missouri Department of Higher Ed. That, or, it could be the University of Missouri system. I think that there's options like that. But if those people come in and say, this curriculum, will get kids, or, that these are the things that they need to be successful in our universities. And that, then that meets the test, that when the states did it, they just said, oh yeah, sign us up for Common Core, and, it's education, check, yeah, we'll deal with that in 5 years, check, yeah, I'll take that money and, we'll deal with this in 5 years. I mean, folks, this is how things happen in politics, I think.
I think a statement from this body, done with the law, saying that the work of these 400 education experts, including higher ed, was considered. That statement combined with this document, we all would have.
Well, I don't know that, but I can just say, getting higher ed to sign on, you just need to realize you're working with a moving target. This is 2008. This is 6 years ago. And we just had higher ed meeting last week on changing general education courses. I mean, they're just like Nessie, in that everything's changing all the time. And so, for you to work towards this and say, this will make them happy.
You described this an hour ago as just a checklist that everybody already did. Like, this has been the same for decades.
Oh, no. I didn't say it's been the same for decades. I said that's what it is. It is a checklist. It's a checklist at a point in time in 2008 of the people who did this. That's what it was. But that was 6 years ago. I'm telling you, things change. They're not always the same. I'm not saying you're wrong in what you're saying. I'm just saying understand it's a moving target.
But you guys met, and you're with that group. We have you here. Are you gonna revise this in the next year?
Oh, I
Has that process started?
I think that has all been set aside.
Yeah.
That took 2 or 3 years to develop that.
Yeah, it took a while. It was not a time.
I think it's less than a year.
Because this is, and I didn't mean to say that there's no guarantees in anything anyone does. Almost every target is in motion, but I do think that,
I'm not
trying to use this as a structure.
I'm not talking about this as whether this is all going to change. I'm just saying getting higher ed to sign on to something is a moving target because it's different all the time.
I'm just wondering, are there any members of the work group, are there any positions available? Because I think it would be helpful if we did have higher ed, because since you mentioned that, I think
There is a number.
I'm sorry. Can you tell me again what you mean? Because we introduced first names only because I came in late this morning.
Each of Southwest Baptist.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm so buffalo.
Before anyone has to leave for anything, I want to say that in an email that I have, it says the October 2nd and 3rd meeting, secondary math is in the Jefferson Building, 6th floor, Commissioners Conference Room.
Is this room not available?
I'm not sure if it is or not, but I'll need to discuss here there. Jefferson Building, which is the one we go there, where we go to lunch, 6th floor, Commissioners Conference Room. And I can email this email call y'all. How's that? Okay. And it says, so that would be for the 2nd and 3rd. That's where secondary math is. If you care, elementary math is on the 5th floor. Oh, that's good. That's the right.
So it's the right order.
Well, it was their 5th grade, it was 6th grade. There we go. And you can talk about what's going to the transition will be in the elevator.
And should we, check with the legislative people too and see if they have meeting rooms and things like that? That's a really common practice for, groups to, to meet in different places.
The house is not in session, all the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's fine for this, but my point was, if you check on that, then when we're doing future scheduling, it may be that at least until January, right? So, that there's, spots, in other places too, so.
It's just a general number of the public practice.
Right. And I truly am going to get up and leave at 11:30, but so just to follow through, with Bob, yeah, I know. And I work for a university that would remove about 80% of that stuff and say, this is all done by technology now, and we are not doing that, and they're an established, higher level, hard, selective admission school, and they would just say, we're done with all that,
Well, we changed our university we changed our college algebra 5 years ago, so that it really is more of a, we do statistics and probability in there. It is an algebra modeling class, is what you can call it. It's not what you would think of when you think of college algebra, because, you know, we felt like it was a better gen ed course, and it does meet the requirements for a gen ed course. And it's still called college algebra because if you change the name, people go crazy. But it's not normal college algebra.
Right. And that is becoming, that is a trend. I mean, I see that everywhere that, you know, are doing that. But I just thought this document is, you know, sort of document that's right now.
Because it is almost time to leave, but it also times us pretty close to break for lunch. Can we sign up times for we're going to take to look at that? What time we're going to break for lunch? What time we're going to come back? And then how much time we're going to allot for those? And I would recommend that we allot, and this is just up to me, my thought is that we put a benchmark like around 2:30ish to be done so that we can have a little bit of leeway time on that. No, not this group, no, certainly not. Okay,
So you
so,
want to start back at 12:30 to do lunch then?
because I know some people do need to review the document, is that correct? Some people are doing that.
We only did about 40 or 45 minutes.
Whatever.
Yeah, we're teachers, we need time, right? So how long, if we start backwards at about 2:30, okay, so choosing 2 liaisons, what would we estimate that would be at the end? That would take on
10 minutes.
5 to 10 minutes or 10 minutes, no, tops. Okay.
So that starts at 2:20.
2:20. Yeah, and so the agenda for the next meeting, so can we start that like at 2, would that take about 10 minutes? Okay, 2 o'clock, 20 minutes, how about at 2 o'clock, so 20 minutes, is that enough time?
Yes, because some of those, you know, I'm still waiting to get some of those documents as well, so I mean, it's gonna be.
I understand, but can we send an email? Can we send you, can it take us long to use a computer at your home?
At my home, yes.
And currently, I don't think that Desi's running us any documents right now. If we have specific documents that we want copied, we need to let Jay know so he can send that to Jerry.
Yes, did they get the information that we wanted, the Massachusetts ones and that?
I asked the group yesterday.
Yes.
To make that decision and who would report that to me.
And then we did.
It went off topic and so.
Exactly.
Now
we all go on.
We said we wanted that.
I don't need a paper copy.
Can we get back to finishing this? Can we stay on topic to finish this timeline and then come back? So how long is it gonna take us to set an agenda?
20 minutes.
20 minutes? 20 minutes. Was there a great time? I didn't mean to do that. Is there, can we do it 20 minutes, you think? Okay. So about 2, set that we've already taken care of sending the dates for the next meeting. So that gives us back to 2 o'clock. Would that give us in 45 minutes to look at the higher ed document and the Common Core document? We kind of split those times equally. Does that seem to make sense?
If we don't finish, it's the next agenda.
Right, so then whatever we don't do would become the next steps and what else we want to do after that. Is that okay? Okay, so we are going to break. Do we need to discuss anything else before anybody breaks for lunch? Yes,
Just one more thing, I'm sorry, but you know, and I'm all better with electronics, but maybe some people are happy that those Massachusetts standards would be a good thing. Can you two-sided copy them and it's not so terrible for paper?
Here's the question. The question is what version, what year, what?
2000.
There's a 2004 supplement as well.
And there's a 2011.
There's a 2011.
Well, and the other thing that we need to delineate is, do we need K through 5? Because we're looking at 6 through 12, so.
We might go 5 through 12.
Yeah.
Maybe
5 through 12, but like year. Because I think there's a big difference between the 2004 was clarifications of the 2000, so we need to be specific.
2011 is what they're currently using.
Right, but we don't want that.
Yeah, so.
You don't want it. Yeah, so that's what you're saying.
No, it's their adaptations.
Well, so what we talked about yesterday were the 2001, and I know that those changes, you know, but we can look at those later. And the 2001 has the advantage of being a single coherent document.
And the 2004, I think, has a lot of additional things added into it, which is what I know people like because it has the clarifications, but when we're writing standards out, then you don't do that to start, that's when you come in later.
We're gonna clarify as we go, right?
So it's the 2000.
So the 2000 is what we're all going to agree upon in grades
Yes.
5 through high school. So starting with grade 5, we don't need anything before grade 5.
And only the math plan is still.
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah, we'll leave that.
We have that on our Dropbox, right?
Yes, it's in there.
That would be,
So, well, please provide us with copies.
One per person, or 6 copies for the group, or?
How many people, so how many, should we have maybe, how many people, like you're going to be leaving, so leaving now, but maybe, I don't know if they can even get into us this afternoon. I kind of have my doubts.
let's talk about the next one, I think.
Right.
So for the next, how many pages do you know that this is really long pages?
Which one? Massachusetts, grade is 137. We started grade 5, because 5 and 6, those are grade bands in that document, which anyone who's been a teacher in
we did that before.
will scream at grade bands. But it starts on grade 5, starts, I believe, Kathy, on 25, and it goes up to 137, so.
112.
113. You always come
No, you didn't, but you.
7.
But you have to add
Oh, you had-
one. It doesn't really.
I don't think we need all the references.
That's what I was gonna say, I don't think we need those, because if we want that, we can get them later.
The glossary, the development.
So who needs a copy of them? That's.
Well, also at the end, the learning grade standards for grade standards, grades 3, 8, 6, that's a portion of it at the end, but I don't think we need those. Based off of pre-calculus, I believe, you know, looking at these one, is that correct?
Are you saying dismissing what's beyond that?
What I'm saying.
Let's not just.
But beyond that is learning standards by grade standard for pre-K through 6. So it grades even more, shall I say, you want me to.
We got the whole thing, so we just need to make 2 copies.
Well, why don't we make, because we have people that are not here as well, so why can't we get maybe 4 to 6 total that are here for the next time, so that we can all look at that, and then we can print them off, I can look on the computer, rather than print them off the signature.
In case we need to communicate while we're not in this room, would it be okay if we, since we were sending everything to Dropbox, if we started a document and then we just put an email on the document, that we save to Dropbox so that we would have a way to communicate?
So we can get it.
Email addresses.
Yes.
We just need information. And I don't think it's wrong for someone to want to look at the 2011 frameworks. We can look at whatever we want.
It's in our Dropbox too.
And yeah, we won't set restrictions on what we can look at. And Judge, make your own judgment. So, are we ready for lunch? I can see that we're something that together the building can do some good.
Sorry, can we leave our stuff here?
Yes. Is that okay?
You know, the secure here, can we take our stuff?